Chapter 544. An old man at the form synthesis stage suddenly rushed out from the crowd, and a majestic pressure immediately covered Muyu. Tian Jiansheng, the elder of Stargate, was the elder who had been ordered to protect Tian Bushi. Originally, he had thought that it would be easy for Tian Bushi to defeat Sikong Chiwen or Muyu with the Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield. He had thought that he wouldn't need to do anything at all, and that Tian Bushi would be able to solve all the problems. However, he hadn't expected that the Heavenly Star Spear and Heavenly Star Shield would be destroyed. Even the 7 stars brilliant moon that Stargate was so proud of couldn't defeat Muyu. Tian Bushi was about to be killed by Muyu. Tian Bushi couldn't hold back any longer and immediately attacked. Tian Jiansheng shouted angrily and slapped Muyu. His soul-stirring spiritual power instantly turned into a monstrous giant palm, and everyone's expression changed. Muyu couldn't take this palm in his current state. Stargate was so shameless. This was supposed to be a battle between 2 extreme celestials, but they still relied on their elders to intervene. Muyu's eyes turned cold. He didn't dare to be careless when facing a form synthesis stage cultivator. However, he had to kill Tian Bushi, no matter who his opponent was. Only when Tian Bushi was dead could he avenge Deadwood Daddy. He gritted his teeth, and the runes in his hands surged. Mu Ling's sword was suddenly wrapped by the runes, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a lush forest in front of him, which was particularly eye-catching in the desolate desert. All the leaves of the towering trees had fallen off and turned into thousands of phantoms, which rushed toward Tian Jiansheng's giant palm. Tian Jiansheng's gigantic palm came crashing down like an avalanche. He didn't hold back at all. He clearly wanted to kill Muyu. However, countless tree shadows flickered and intertwined under the giant palm and were destroyed by the spiritual power of the form synthesis stage. However, an endless stream of green shadows grew again. Thousands of leaves grew endlessly and were annihilated, but more tree shadows grew, weakening the power of the giant palm bit by bit. Unfortunately, the attack of a form synthesis stage cultivator was too powerful. Before Muyu could kill Tian Bushi in time, he was sent flying backward and fell heavily on the sand dune. Tian Jiansheng raised his palm again. Tian Jiansheng, how dare you interfere in a battle between extreme immortals? Aren't you afraid that the Sanchong Palace will punish you? Master Lu and Situ Yang Tian shouted angrily and rushed out. The incomparably powerful formation instantly blocked in front of Muyu. Master Lu rushed to Muyu's side and helped Muyu up. Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing also wanted to rush over, but they were imprisoned in place by Master Lu's formation. Their cultivation was too low. If they rushed over rashly, it would be easy for them to get into trouble. Muyu, are you all right? Master Lu's face was also full of anger. He transferred his spiritual power into Muyu's body to help Muyu recover from his injuries. However, he was somewhat shocked to see that Muyu's aura was very old at this moment, as if he had entered his twilight years. He was much older than Master Lu. Although his appearance hadn't changed, the aura of his twilight years was wandering around his body, as if he would die in the next moment. You shouldn't have used your vitality to activate the formation. Master Lu was very angry. Compared to Tian Jinsheng's interference, the terrible situation in Muyu's body worried him more. There are some things that I must do. Muyu stared at Tian Bushi, who was being protected behind Tian Jiansheng. For example, killing Tian Bushi. However, Muyu still couldn't kill Tian Bushi with his own hands. The people of Stargate had interfered in this competition. He knew from the beginning that with Tian Bushui's identity, there would definitely be experts around to protect him. Therefore, when they fought, he wanted to use the formation to envelop Tian Bushi. Through the camouflage of the formation, the people of Stargate wouldn't be able to see the situation between him and Tian Bushi. Unfortunately, Tian Bushi wasn't an ordinary person. He directly broke free from Muyu's formation. Muyu could have killed his enemy with his own hands, but he couldn't do it. One could imagine the anger in his heart. You're too shameless. How can Stargate interfere in a competition between supreme immortals? That's right. The Sanchong strictly forbids people over the age of 40 from interfering in the competition between the supreme immortals. You've already violated the rules. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen anyone as shameless as you. You said it was a one-on-one fight, but you actually interfered. Life and death in a competition between supreme immortals is up to fate. How can your young master of Stargate be an exception? If you can't afford to play, then don't stay on the Supreme Immortals leaderboard. Get out of here! Get out of here! All the self-cultivators began to curse loudly. Without exception, they began to loudly criticize Tian Jinqing's actions. In their opinion, Stargate relied on their elders to interfere in this matter, which undoubtedly violated the fairness of the Supreme Immortals leaderboard. It was despicable. However, Tian Jinqing turned a deaf ear to the curses around him. He supported his young master with a gloomy face. At this moment, Tian Bushui's right wrist had been cut off at the base. The broken wrist had also been minced by the sword energy. There was no way to reattach it. However, he wasn't worried. As long as he had the intermittent grass, he could find a self-cultivator whose right hand was compatible with Tian Bushui's and cut off their hand to reattach it. This wasn't the first time they'd done something like this. When Tian Yun's leg was cut off by Mu Yu, they'd also done the same thing to turn him back into a normal person. But none of this was important. Tian Bushui's main concern was that he was furious. This was because Tian Bushui was the successor of the next Gate Master. He had extraordinary talent. If he was given time to grow, he would definitely be able to shoulder the heavy responsibility of the Gate Master in the future. In fact, the Gate Master of Stargate, Tian Yuehen, sent Qing Ming the Shadow Killer not to kill Mu Yu, but to seriously injure Mu Yu. This way, Mu Yu wouldn't be able to use his full strength when fighting with Tian Bushui, and he would be killed by Tian Bushui. Tian Yuehen had spent a lot of money to promote his son in the world of self-cultivators. Most of the people who had been defeated by Tian Bushui in the past had been secretly injured by Qing Ming the Shadow Killer beforehand, so they lost to Tian Bushui. Stargate's status in the world of self-cultivators was prominent, and no one dared to provoke them. Tian Yuehen didn't need his son to grow up in life and death battles. What he needed was to create an invincible gimmick for his son. As long as this gimmick existed, he would naturally be able to shock everyone in the world of self-cultivators when he inherited the position of Gate Master in the future. If it weren't for the mysterious origin of Sikong Chiwen and the shadowy men's offer of a price that Tian Yuehen couldn't accept, Sikong Chiwen would have also become the target of Qing Ming the Shadow Killer. Therefore, Tian Yuehen could only take a step back and encourage people from other sects to help Tian Bushui fight against Sikong Chiwen and let Qing Ming the Shadow Killer deal with Mu Yu. However, Tian Yuehen's plans still failed. Qing Ming, who was feared by everyone, was actually defeated by Mu Yu, which was unexpected. Tian Bushui planned to kill Mu Yu himself and establish his prestige in the world of self-cultivators. But his right hand was cut off by Mu Yu, and he was completely defeated. When Tian Jinsheng saw Lu Xianshi and Situ Yangtian appear, he didn't continue to attack Mu Yu. Instead, he helped Tian Bushui up and began to heal him. Although Lu Xianshi and Situ Yangtian were only at the spirit-severing stage, they were still powerful array masters. Two spirit-severing stage innate array masters were no match for him, but they were more than enough to delay him for a while. He was worried that someone would take this opportunity to attack Tian Bushui, so he didn't act rashly at this moment. My young master is already lost. I didn't kill Mu Yu, I just saved my own people. How can I break the rules of the Supreme Immortal List? On the other hand, were all the disciples of true gods so ruthless? Why don't you let him go after winning? Do you have to kill him? Tian Jinsheng shouted. This old man still had the face to slander him. How shameless are you to say such words? Didn't Tian Bushui say that he wanted to kill Mu Yu at the beginning? Why can't you allow Mu Yu to kill Tian Bushui? Is Stargate a sore loser? Lu Xianshi replied angrily. If you can't afford to lose, then hide in a mouse hole in the future. Save yourself from making a fool of yourself. In a battle between supreme immortals, life and death are determined by fate. It's normal for a supreme immortal to kill a supreme immortal. Can you, Stargate, not be so shameless? Everyone had already started cursing. The Heavenly Star Sect's actions had made everyone very angry. At the beginning, Tian Busui was still elegantly discussing with Sikong Chiwen who could take Mu Yu's life, and take Mu Yu's life as a trophy. But who would have thought that the originally arrogant Tian Busui would be completely defeated by Mu Yu like a crippled dog? He even needed to rely on his elders to save his life. What a naked irony! Tian Jiansheng said coldly, Stargate has never been afraid of anyone. How can the life of my young master be compared to the life of a group of people like you? If there's anyone who's not convinced, you can stand up. Stargate will accompany you to the end. The pressure of a body fusion stage cultivator spread out again and heavily pressed down on everyone's hearts. His eyes were like lightning. Every self-cultivator who was swept by his gaze couldn't help but take a step back and didn't dare to speak again. Stargate's tone was so arrogant. However, the arrogance of the Heavenly Star Sect was well known in the cultivation world. They had the capital and strength to be arrogant. Even if they had provoked public anger by interfering with the competition, none of the onlookers were fools. No one dared to be the first to stand out. Being the first to stand out meant that they would be remembered by the Colossus Stargate. No one wanted to be targeted by this kind of shameless jackal, wolf, tiger, and leopard. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. Even the battle between Long Tongue Xiao Shuai and Sikong Chiwen in the distance had stopped. The two of them quickly returned to Mu Yu's side. Xiao Shuai had already begun to surge the surrounding spiritual energy, wrapping it around Mu Yu's body. Mu Ling's sword fell in front of Mu Yu. Master Lu and Situ Yang Tian looked at each other, and then looked at Mu Ling's sword that had transformed into thousands of tree shadows just now. They were shocked. Everyone thought that the tree shadows just now were transformed by an array, but Master Lu and Situ Yang Tian were both experienced array masters. How could they not see that it wasn't an array at all? Those array patterns were just camouflage for the trees. Only Mu Yaman could create these tree shadows. Both of them showed a trace of surprise and uncertainty in their eyes. They thought of the 5 people who were rumored to be related to Mu Yameng in the third continent. Could it be that Mu Yu was also one of them? However, Master Lu and Sitian Tian both pursed their lips and chose to ignore this matter. In any case, Mu Yu is the leader of the Array Talisman sect. This was enough. The Heavenly Star sect is really impressive. You dare to interfere in the competition between US 3 Supreme Immortals? Sikong Chiwen said slowly. He raised his head and looked at the sun. It was less than a quarter of an hour away from noon. A strange smile suddenly appeared at the corner of his mouth. From the beginning to the end of this competition, he had been looking at the sun in the sky and calculating the time, as if he was waiting for something. Even when he was fighting Xiao Shuai and Long Tongue, he was calm and relaxed, as if he was deliberately stalling for time. Chapter 545. After Sikong Chiwen stepped out, the atmosphere suddenly became very quiet. Only the yellow sand was whistling in the sky, which made the atmosphere seem a little bleak. Today, everyone came to the Death Desert to watch the fight between Sikong Chiwen and Tian Buchi. Originally, no one had any hope for Mu Yu. However, things developed beyond their expectations. Not only did Mu Yu directly defeat Tian Buchi, but he also relied on 2 powerful spiritual beasts to hold back Sikong Chiwen. This mysterious young man was not only a genius of the Danding sect, but also a powerful array master. He also had powerful demonic beasts like the Earthly Emperor's sect. He also had superb swordsmanship. The disciple of a true god really lived up to his name. In everyone's eyes, even with Sikong Chiwen's strength, he was still held back by Mu Yu's 2 demonic beasts. This meant that if Sikong Chiwen really fought with Mu Yu one-on-one, he would have no chance of winning. Although Sikong Chiwen was a dark horse on the Supreme Immortal list, if they really fought, he might not be a match for Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu was now seriously injured, and one of Mu Yu's hand was chopped off by Tian Buchi. Sikong Chiwen would be the final winner of this battle. Sikong Chiwen ignored everyone's gaze. He just looked coldly at Tian Jiansheng and sneered. Your Stargate has interfered with the affairs of the Supreme Immortals. Today, you don't have to go back alive. The surrounding self-cultivators were in an uproar. Everyone looked at Sikong Chiwen in surprise. Tian Jiansheng was at the form synthesis stage of the Stargate. No matter how outstanding Sikong Chiwen was, he was only at the spirit severing stage. Where do you get the confidence to kill Tian Jiansheng? What? Do you think you can stop me? Tian Jiansheng looked at Sikong Chiwen with disdain, as if he had heard a very funny joke. He was a master at the form synthesis stage. This was the first time that a spirit-severing stage cultivator dared to threaten him like this. Even other self-cultivators at the body integration stage wouldn't dare to talk to him like that. As a member of Stargate, he was never afraid of anyone in the world of self-cultivators. Tian Jiansheng helped Tian Bushi up and took out a healing pill to stop his bleeding. Stargate can easily wipe out a small Sikong family like yours. Heaven Budding Heaven's face was as white as a sheet. He looked at Mu Yu with eyes full of hatred. The young master of Stargate had one of his hands chopped off by Mu Yu in front of so many people. This was a great humiliation. Even shadows lay, and Ming Ming, don't dare to provoke me. Who do you think you are? Let's see how you're going to escape today. Sikong Chiwen said with an arrogant smile. But in the eyes of the onlookers, his threat seemed a little exaggerated. Sikong Chiwen might be powerful, but he didn't have any backing. How could he compare to a giant like Stargate? Even if Sikong Chiwen had the protection of the Supreme Immortal Law, Stargate could easily eliminate the Sikong family in Clearwater City without Sikong Chiwen's help. Tian Jinxing's heart sank. He knew that Sikong Chiwen was right. The Shadow Killer organization dared to accept Mu Yu's mission, but offered a sky-high price to assassinate Sikong Chiwen. This meant that the Shadow Killer organization knew some secrets about Sikong Chiwen that even the Eight Gates didn't know about. But Tian Jinxing was still not afraid. No matter how powerful Sikong Chiwen's secret was, how could he fight against the entire Stargate alone? If I, Tian Jinxing, want to leave, who can stop me? Tian Jinxing's body exploded with a powerful spiritual force. Today, none of you can leave, Sikong Chiwen said with a sinister smile. He looked up at the sky. It was almost noon. Everyone saw Sikong Chiwen smile and couldn't help but shiver. The Death Gobi was located in the middle of the desert. The temperature here was terrifyingly high. Even if self-cultivators had spiritual force to protect their bodies, they would still feel the heat. But when they saw Sikong Chiwen smile, they felt a burst of gloomy coldness that made their hair stand on end. But everyone thought that it was just an illusion. Although they didn't know what techniques Sikong Chiwen used to improve his cultivation by leaps and bounds, everyone knew his background. Sikong Chiwen only had the Sikong family behind him. The Sikong family was originally a second-rate family in Clearwater City. They only rose because of Sikong Chiwen. With Sikong Chiwen's ability, how could he keep Tian Jinxing and Tian Buho? Brat, let's see what you have to keep us here. Tian Jinxing's aura kept fluctuating. The pressure of the body fusion stage was like a monstrous wave, making people's hearts palpitate. It seemed like a good show was about to start. But little Shuai jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder and looked at Sikong Chiwen in the distance. He whispered, Mu Yu, I think that Sikong Chiwen is a bit strange. When he was fighting with us just now, he didn't use his full strength at all. There were a few times when he could have beaten us back, but he didn't. When he was fighting with us, he was watching the two of you fight with ease. He also looked up at the time from time to time. He seems to be waiting for something. Waiting for what? Mu Yu's heart skipped a beat. Sikong Chiwen's rise had always been speculated by people. Most of the people here were actually here for him. A few days ago, when he met Bai Tian once said that on the 6th day of every month, Sikong Chiwen's cultivation would mysteriously increase. Moreover, the Death Gobi was where Sikong Chiwen went missing. It was also because of that disappearance that Sikong Chiwen seemed to have become a different person. What was Sikong Chiwen waiting for? Was he waiting for his cultivation to increase again? Mu Yu looked up at the sun. It was getting closer and closer noon. Master Lu, Master Situ, Are my grandfather and father here too? Muyu asked. Yes, but they are in the crowd. I didn't let them come over. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to take care of them if something happened, Master Lu replied. You two go protect them. I have a feeling that something is going to happen. Muyu looked at Sikong Chiwen's increasingly strange smile and felt that something was wrong. But you are more important. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. With the two of them around, my hands and feet will be tied. Hurry up and bring them back to Clearwater City. Long Tongue and Little Marshall will protect me. This is an order, Muyu said without hesitation. Master Lu and Situ Yangtian looked at each other. Muyu is their sect master. His words were orders to them. They could only nod helplessly. Then, they flew towards Mu Tianhe and Mu Zhixing and left with them. The others didn't care about Master Lu and Situ Yangtian's departure. Everyone's attention was on Sikong Chiwen and Tian Jiansheng. Sikong Chiwen wasn't afraid of Tian Jiansheng, who was in the body fusion stage. He even had a trace of ridicule on his face. Why did Sikong Chiwen dare to look down on Tian Jiansheng? Tian Jiansheng felt very uncomfortable under Sikong Chiwen's gaze. He thought that he was being paranoid. He was a body fusion stage cultivator. Even if he couldn't kill an extreme immortal, he could still leave this place calmly. The onlookers kept pointing at them. Tian Jiansheng didn't want to stay any longer. He planned to leave with Tian Buchi. You interfered with the competition between us three extreme immortals. You have to leave your life behind. The sword in Sikong Chiwen's hand flashed with yellow light. He pointed at Tian Jiansheng. Suddenly, his aura kept rising. This aura was rising so fast that it caught everyone off guard. They were horrified to find that there was a terrible power rioting in Sikong Chiwen's body. It was as if something was trying to break free from his body. When the sun finally reached noon, Sikong Chiwen's expression showed a trace of fanaticism. From cold to fanaticism, Sikong Chiwen's expression made everyone feel a little incredulous. However, at this moment, the whole desert was suddenly swept by a violent sandstorm. However, the most unbelievable thing was that Sikong Chiwen's cultivation had unexpectedly skyrocketed. 6th Heaven of Spirit Separation Stage. 7th Heaven of Spirit Separation Stage. 8th Heaven of Spirit Separation Stage. 9th Heaven of Spirit Separation Stage. 1st Heaven of Body Fusion Stage. Sikong Chiwen was like a hot knife through butter. Those cultivation barriers that had troubled so many people were like window paper to him. He could break them with a single poke. How can a person's cultivation increase so fast? Everyone was stunned. They all looked at Sikong Chiwen in disbelief. Tian Jiansheng's expression finally changed. Sikong Chiwen's breakthrough was so fast that no one in the world could increase their cultivation as fast as him. However, Sikong Chiwen cultivation was still skyrocketing. It was very strange. The cold, killing intent on his body was also getting stronger and stronger. Everyone felt that something was shrouding them and suppressing their bodies. What's going on? Has Sikong Chiwen been hiding his cultivation all this time? Muyu frowned. His first reaction was that Sikong Chiwen had been a body synthesis stage cultivator for a long time. He was just pretending to be weak. However, this didn't make sense. One's cultivation couldn't be hidden from the extreme immortal ranking. No matter how Muyu disguised himself, his true cultivation would always be shown on the extreme immortal ranking board. Sikong Chiwen was no exception. This could only mean that Sikong Chiwen was a real spirit-severing stage cultivator in the past. However, such a strange change happened to him today. This really shocked everyone. Sikong Chiwen's cultivation had never increased like this before. What was Sikong Chiwen relying on? Could it be that there was some secret hidden in this death desert? Everyone was shocked and doubtful. However, Sikong Chiwen had already moved. He was very fast. His yellow sword was heavy and thick. In the blink of an eye, he was above Tian Jiansheng. Then, he slashed down at Tian Jiansheng. Tian Jiansheng's expression changed slightly. A fierce giant palm appeared in his hand and met Sikong Chiwen's flying sword head-on. Boom! The giant palm and the flying sword collided. A terrifying shockwave exploded with the two of them as the center. The battle between body synthesis stage cultivators instantly sent everyone flying. That heaven-destroying and earth-annihilating strike was so terrifying that it exceeded everyone's imagination. Muyu's body and hands surged with runes. A black and white barrier appeared around him and enveloped him. But even so, the huge fluctuations had already caused his array technique to be on the verge of collapse. After everyone stood firm, they looked at the two people who were fighting. Everyone's expression changed greatly. Tian Jiansheng was lying on the ground under Sikong Chiwen's feet. With just one move, the Heavenly Star Sex Body Integration Stage Elder, Tian Jiansheng, had already fallen to the ground. How is this possible? Is he a human or a ghost? Everyone was shocked by Sikong Chiwen. Sikong Chiwen's cultivation was only at the spirit-severing stage. How could his cultivation suddenly soar so fast? It was unbelievable. Not to mention that he had killed the arrogant Tian Jiansheng with just a single blow. What the hell happened? Muyu was also very surprised. This was beyond the scope of ordinary people's understanding. How did Sikong Chiwen break through to the form synthesis stage? How did he defeat Tian Jiansheng? However, the weirder thing was still to come. The sandstones of the Death Desert that had been destroyed by Mu Yu gradually reappeared from the dust as if they were summoned by something. They reassembled and gradually restored the original appearance of the rock wall. Around the Gobi Desert of Death, sand began to flow like flowing water, surging and leaping. The deep groove created by Mu Yu's shadow sword also began to heal. What's going on? Is this an illusion array? Many people were dumbfounded as they looked at the Death Desert that had been restored to its original appearance. They were extremely shocked. Muyu stood up abruptly. He caught a trace of a familiar aura from the Death Desert. This was not an illusion array at all, nor was it any kind of array technique. Next will be the funeral in the desert. None of the 200,000 cultivators will be able to get away. Sikong Chiwen licked his lips and put on a sour smile. Chapter 546. The noon sun scorched the sand dunes, as if it wanted to burn the entire desert. In the depths of the desert, far away from the 200,000 self-cultivators, three figures appeared on a sand dune. They were Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Shimen Wuji. Qingyan squatted down and grabbed a handful of sand under his feet. The sand slowly slid down his fingertips. His face was very grim, luring the tiger away from the mountain. The problem is serious. We have to hurry to Muyu's place, Luo Shang said in a deep voice. For the first time, Shimen Wuji withdrew his cynical smile and followed Qingyan and Luo Shang to the Death Desert without saying a word. Near the Death Desert, the desert was vast and boundless, with no end in sight. Only the oasis, Clearwater City, was located in the center of the desert. At this moment, there were 20 places in the desert where countless self-cultivators had gathered. These self-cultivators relied on the mirage array set up by Master Lu and Sitian Tian to watch the scene in the Death Desert from afar. The 200,000 self-cultivators, without exception, saw how Sikong Chiwen's cultivation suddenly skyrocketed and how he defeated Tian Jiansheng, who was at the body integration stage, with one blow. Then, the terrifying laughter clearly vibrated in everyone's ears, making them shiver. What did desert funeral mean? Many self-cultivators stared at each other in confusion. They didn't understand what Sikong Chiwen was talking about, but they also suddenly felt a strong sense of crisis in their hearts. This sense of crisis came so quickly that even they didn't understand why it appeared. A sandstorm had already started in the desert. Yellow sand began to fly all over the sky, drifting in all directions. A sandstorm wasn't something to be afraid of for self-cultivators. Anyone with a little bit of cultivation knew how to deal with a sandstorm. It was impossible for them to be affected by a sandstorm. Everyone's body surged with spiritual energy, blocking the wind and sand outside, not letting the wind and sand get close to them. However, they soon found that something was wrong. The sandstorm in the desert began to splatter, dancing with the wind. It kept swirling, forming sand curls. The sand tornado erupted with a strong, tearing force, and began to attack the densely packed self-cultivators. There were no less than a few hundred of them, and the power of each one was getting stronger and stronger. Where did this tornado come from? Everyone felt that something was wrong. It was the first time they had seen such a majestic amount of sand roll in the desert. The amount was beyond everyone's imagination. Most of these 200,000 self-cultivators were outsiders and not natives of Clearwater City. Therefore, they did not know how to deal with so many salon scrolls. Everyone, let's disperse these sand roll so that it won't affect our mood, someone suggested. Everyone had the same idea. Soon, everyone began to bring out their own magical weapons and threw them at the Sand Dragon Scroll. The Sand Dragon Scroll was just an anomaly caused by the weather. In the eyes of these people, it was not worth mentioning. Besides, there were a total of 20 places in the desert, and each place had 10,000 self-cultivators. If these 10,000 self-cultivators were to take action, one could imagine how terrifying their power would be. However, when the cultivator's spiritual energy hit the tornado wasn't scattered by the tens of thousands of cultivators as expected. On the contrary, the tornado suddenly swallowed all the cultivators' spiritual energy, and its volume suddenly increased by no less than 10 times. What's going on? Many people did not believe it and continued to attack with the magical weapons in their hands. However, the Sand Dragon Scroll was getting bigger and closer, and there were no signs of it collapsing. Finally, a trace of fear appeared on everyone's face. The 200,000 self-cultivators began to become restless. There's something wrong with the Sand Dragon Scroll. Everyone retreat. Some people had already sensed that something was wrong and wanted to leave. However, they were surrounded by the desert and were already surrounded by the terrifying Sand Dragon Scroll. The few self-cultivators on the periphery did not have time to escape and were swallowed by the sand tornado. The Sand Dragon Scroll was getting bigger and bigger. The sand roared nonstop and ferociously pounced on the self-cultivators. All the cultivators in the desert panicked and began to scatter in all directions. Those with higher cultivations ran away quickly, but those with lower cultivations were simply unable to break free from the strong suction force of the tornado. They were directly sucked into the tornado, screaming madly in shock and anger. Soon, there was no more sound coming from them. Since you came to watch my competition, I have to collect some tickets. All of you will become my artwork under my Sand Dragon Scroll. Sikong Chiwen's cold laughter spread throughout the desert and exploded in everyone's ears. Everyone was trembling in fear as they tried to avoid the Sand Dragon Scroll. However, the Sand Dragon Scroll followed them like a shadow, swallowing batch after batch of self-cultivators. No one would have thought that the Sand Dragon Scroll in the desert was actually created by Sikong Chiwen. How can Sikong Chiwen control so much sand? This is completely impossible. Could he be a soil yaman? A terrifying thought spread through everyone's mind. No one knew who shouted, but an endless fear suddenly enveloped everyone's heart. If a soil yaman appeared in the desert, then the desert was simply the best battlefield for them. However, how could Sikong Chiwen be a soil yaman? Even if he was a soil yaman, how could he control so many Sand Dragon Scrolls with just the power of a single yaman? After experiencing the funeral in the desert, you will all be reborn as the people of Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Donching. You should feel honored. Sikong Chiwen couldn't stop laughing. His eyes turned brown like a grain of sand, strange and unpredictable. Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Donching. Everyone's face changed. Could it be that Sikong Chiwen was a demon? The Sand Dragon Scroll swallowed every self-cultivator. All kinds of self-cultivators were sucked into the Sand Dragon Scroll. Their terrified voices disappeared in the Sand Dragon Scroll in the blink of an eye. Not even a single bone was left. If we charge out together, there will definitely be a sliver of hope to escape. In less than a moment, 1/10 of the self-cultivators were already swallowed by the Sand Dragon Scroll. The remaining self-cultivators were completely trapped like beasts. The Sand Dragon Scroll came from all directions and surrounded all the self-cultivators. A powerful tearing force wreaked havoc. The moment someone got too close, they would disappear in the blink of an eye. Charge out? I spent so much effort to create this huge battle between extreme immortals just to lure you self-cultivators here. Where do you think you're going? Sikong Chiwen laughed arrogantly. His voice was like a thunderclap that resounded through the sky, shocking everyone. This battle between extreme immortals was just a gimmick deliberately created by Sikong Chiwen. But what was Sikong Chiwen's goal? Could it be to help Desert Eagle Demon King break free from the seal? Muyu struggled to stand up. Little Shuai and Long Tongue both jumped onto his shoulders. Muyu panted heavily. He felt very weak. After using the array, too much of his life force was sucked away. Even he couldn't hold on. Life force. I need life force. Muyu grabbed Ling's sword. He wanted to suck life force from it because it was originally the most vibrant thing in the world. However, Ling's sword only trembled slightly. It didn't move at all. After it was infected by the Netherworld Grass Death aura, its life force was no longer pure. It couldn't provide Muyu with true life force. The vast surroundings were already surrounded by tens of thousands of sand dragons. There wasn't a single plant. Without a plant, it meant that Muyu couldn't take life force from the plants. His current situation wasn't optimistic. Shwa! The sand under Muyu's feet suddenly spun. It instantly formed a sand curtain that enveloped Muyu. The sand spun and danced around Muyu. A huge aura instantly pressed down on Muyu. Little Shuai slapped his head and snatched the shadow clone sword from Muyu's hand. He muttered, Muyu, the life force you need isn't a shadow clone sword. When you used the array just now, your life force didn't flow away. Instead, it was firmly trapped in the sword. Its small claws quickly swiped across the shadow clone sword. The shadow clone sword seemed to be responding to Little Shuai. It actually lit up with a green light. Then, Little Shuai returned the shadow clone sword to Muyu. Muyu held onto the shadow clone sword. He could clearly feel the life force in the shadow clone sword slowly moving. Then, it actually returned to Muyu's body. Muyu was too lazy to ask what Little Shuai had to do with the shadow clone sword. He felt that something that had flowed out of his body was gradually recovering. The feeling of weakness had already left him. It was as if he had been reborn. However, the sand curtain around him was already covering Muyu's body. At this moment, Muyu didn't have time to dodge. The spirit energy shield around him was swallowed up by the sand. Even the array pattern couldn't escape. This sand was really strange. You two hold on tight, Muyu shouted. His whole body had already merged into Ling's sword. Then, the sand curtain covered Ling's sword tightly in the blink of an eye, turning it into a sand sculpture. Not only him, but in the blink of an eye, the 200,000 self-cultivators were completely corroded by the sand curtain. Even the body integration stage self-cultivators were able to escape. In the entire desert, Sikong Chiwen was the only living person left. The sand curtain gradually dissipated. One by one, figures stood in the desert. These were the 200,000 self-cultivators who came to watch the battle. A quarter of an hour ago, they were still people who could move. However, at this moment, every self-cultivator's body was tightly wrapped in sand. They had become sand sculptures and were still struggling to escape. Sikong Chiwen slowly walked in front of each sand sculpture. His eyes were filled with a scorching brown light. Then, he suddenly looked up to the sky and let out a long whistle. The sound was extremely distant, like some kind of calling whistle. Then, the restored Death Desert suddenly trembled violently. The speed of the sand around the Death Desert became faster and faster. Then, the Death Desert began to split and move. It moved to a mysterious position, leaving a whirlpool of sand in the center. In the center of the whirlpool, a spire gradually appeared. Then, the first floor, the second floor, until 7 floors appeared. Then it slowly stopped. After a rough estimation, each floor of the tower was about 10 meters high. These 7 floors were about 70 meters high. The exterior of this 7-floor tower was crimson red. The body of the tower was carved with strange reliefs. Upon closer inspection, it looked like a battle scene between the human race, the human, and the demon race. It was very spectacular. Sikong Chiwen looked at the 7-floor tower. The fanaticism in his eyes became more and more obvious. Chapter 547. The moment the seven-story sand eagle exquisite pagoda appeared, the entire desert seemed to become a bit austere. There was even a hint of demonic aura spreading out. Sikong Chiwen's eyes flashed with a brown light. He stretched out his hands, and a vast amount of spiritual energy flowed from his hands into the towering desert eagle exquisite pagoda. The entire pagoda glowed brighter and brighter. As Sikong Chiwen's spirit force poured in, the tall sand eagle exquisite pagoda trembled. An inexplicable force flowed around it, and the pagoda continued to shrink. The originally 70-meter tall sand eagle exquisite pagoda became half a meter tall and flew into Sikong Chiwen's hands. Sand eagle exquisite blood pagoda, the great sand eagle demonic king. Sikong Chiwen's voice was very hoarse, as if he was chanting. He gently rotated the shrunken 7-story pagoda in his hands. Every time he rotated a story, the desert would shake once. He rotated it 7 times, and the desert shook 7 times. Then, with the death desert as the center, the rock caved in and an ancient city gate slowly appeared. There was a huge eagle carved on the ancient city gate. It was very lifelike, as if it was about to spread its wings and soar under the sky. However, the eagle's face was filled with unwillingness, as if it was only able to fly halfway before it was trapped by the city gate. This was exactly the same as what Muyu saw at the Sand Eagle Imperial city gate. The yellow sand of the desert began to dance in the air behind the ancient city gate. Countless grains of sand gradually condensed into a towering cylindrical building that reached into the clouds. More and more yellow sand appeared, as if it had its own consciousness, constantly perfecting every detail and every texture of the building. After about a quarter of an hour, an awe-inspiring tall building appeared in the middle of the desert. The circular building had a diameter of about 200 meters and a height of several thousand meters. This building was divided into a story every 10 meters, and there were countless squares protruding from each story. Each square was about the size of a person and had a small window. It was like a small room, which was very strange. Sikong Chiwen slowly walked to the city gate. There was a depression on the city gate that was in the shape of a pagoda. Sikong Chiwen embedded the 7-story strange tower perfectly into the wall. Then, the ancient city gate opened with a creak. The entire eagle also split open from the middle, revealing a dark passage. As the people of Desert Eagle Demon King Hai Donqing, it's time for you to go home. Sikong Chiwen turned around and said to the self-cultivators who had been turned into sand sculptures. None of the cultivators broke free. They didn't react at all, but all of a sudden, the sand sculptures began to move stiffly. They seemed to have received some sort of order and began to walk towards the city gate. The sand eagles were moving in an orderly manner. Their walking speed was very fast. Some sand eagles were even flying in the sky. The sand condors in other places also flew over, and the black mass of sand condors covered the sky and the earth as they poured into the dark city gate. The 200,000 cultivators who had turned into sand sculptures had already lost their consciousness. Like walking corpses, they had all disappeared into the dark city gate in just 4 hours. Cracks appeared on the sand surrounding Mu Ling's sword, and countless green leaves spread out. However, these leaves quickly retracted and only circled around the cracks. Could this be where Desert Eagle Demon King was sealed? Muyu wasn't controlled by the sand inside Mu Ling's sword. If he wanted to come out, he could use Mu Ling's sword to escape. However, when he heard about Desert Eagle Demon King, he didn't want to come out. Instead, he wanted to sneak into the passage and see what was going on. He wasn't confident in dealing with Sikong Chiwen, whose cultivation had skyrocketed. He could only act according to the situation. Back in the desert forest, he saw Desert Eagle Royal City and even stole Desert Eagle Demon King's Ghost Falcon from Tian Busui and the Demon Race. It was said that the Ghost Falcon was the key to finding Desert Eagle Demon King. Muyu hadn't figured out how to use the Ghost Falcon after so long. The Ghost Falcon was still lying in the exquisite Desert Eagle, and the exquisite desert eagle was in Mu Yu's spatial pouch. If it wasn't for the sudden change today, Mu Yu would have forgotten about the existence of the exquisite desert eagle. However, looking at Sikong Chiwen, he seemed to have a close relationship with Desert Eagle Demon King. Could it be that Sikong Chiwen had become a dark horse on the supreme immortal leaderboard in such a short time because of Desert Eagle Demon King? Creating a gimmick to fight Tian Busui had caused a lot of commotion in the self-cultivation world. Later, Mu Yu's participation caused more and more self-cultivators to come. They wanted to see the battle between the three supreme immortals with the most potential. No one thought that this was a trap set by Sikong Chiwen. The reason why Sikong Chiwen didn't attack Mu Yu at the Mu Mansion was probably because of the arrival of these 200,000 self-cultivators. With Mu Yu's reputation, more self-cultivators would be attracted. However, Sikong Chiwen deliberately turned these 200,000 self-cultivators into sand sculptures. What was his goal? Mu Yu felt that things were getting weirder and weirder. Seeing that countless sand sculptures had entered the passage, Mu Yu thought for a moment and let Mu Ling's sword follow them in. What was strange was that the outside world was a hot desert, but after entering the passage, they felt a chill coming from all directions. Countless sand sculptures were still rushing into the darkness. There were only whistling sounds in the passage, and there was no pushing or shoving. All the sand sculptures seemed to be in order. This passage wasn't long, and it only took a moment for them to enter this strange, cylindrical building. He looked at everything inside in shock. The scene in front of him was really spectacular. From the outside, the walls looked like countless protruding squares, but inside, the walls were sunken squares. At this moment, those self-cultivators who had been turned into sand sculptures were rushing into those sunken areas in an orderly manner. Everyone found their own place and stood. There were also many sand sculptures flying into the sky. From the bottom to the top, there were countless places for these sand sculptures to stand. The sand sculptures were densely packed throughout the entire building. They were like birds that had found their nest. They didn't collide with each other, nor did they compete for a position. It seemed that each sand sculpture knew which floor and which position they should stand on. Soon, all the 200,000 sand sculptures were standing on the walls of the building. The surroundings fell into silence again, and there were no other disturbances. Mu Yu came out of Mu Ling's sword. He carefully jumped into the air and stood behind a sand sculpture. He poked his head out and looked around. Then, Sikong Chiwen slowly walked in. His face was still flashing with a fanatical expression. He rose into the air and floated in the center. He glanced at the sand sculptures on the walls, as if he was very satisfied with these masterpieces of art. He opened his arms, and a strange whistling sound came from his mouth, which echoed throughout the building. The ground suddenly trembled slightly, and an altar slowly emerged. The altar was engraved with countless complicated runes. Each rune was intertwined with each other and emitted a yellow light. These runes were simple and powerful. They had a very majestic power and were vast and ancient, as if they had experienced countless years. Even if Mu Yu had a treasure like the Chaos Yin and Yang, he didn't dare to try to control these runes. At this moment, a human figure was sitting cross-legged on the altar. Mu Yu's eyes widened. This figure was none other than the Desert Eagle Demon King. He had seen Demon King Desert Eagle's statue in the Desert Eagle King city. At that time, Demon King Desert Eagle's statue had been brought to life by the demon race's demonic arts. The person on the altar was exactly the same as Demon King Desert Eagle's statue. Mu Yu was sure that this was a real person and not a statue. The runes on the altar emitted a faint light, trapping Demon King Desert Eagle within. Needless to say, it was a human almighty that had sealed him here. Mu Yu's attainments in array arts were no longer the same as before. He could see that the runes on the altar were gradually weakening. Clearly, Demon King Desert Eagle seal was also gradually weakening, just like the second firmament Demon King, White Ape. However, there were no demons in the desert at this moment. They didn't come to Demon King Desert Eagle's rescue. This meant that even the demons didn't know where Demon King Desert Eagle was sealed by the human almighty. Back then, Mu Yu had obtained exquisite Desert Eagle. This probably caused the demons to lose track of where Demon King Desert Eagle was sealed. Sikong Chiwen had already landed on the side of the altar. He respectfully knelt on the ground and said excitedly, "Demon King, your servant is at your beck and call." Could Sikong Chiwen really be a demon? But how did he hide from the supreme immortal ranking? However, Demon King Desert Eagle was still sitting cross-legged on the ground. He didn't even open his eyes. It was as if he didn't hear what Sikong Chiwen said. Sikong Chiwen waited for a long time, but there was no response. He raised his head in confusion and looked at Demon King Desert Eagle. Suddenly, his expression changed. Muyu also felt that something was wrong. With his perception of life force, he clearly knew that Demon King Desert Eagle's body didn't have any signs of life. Demon King Desert Eagle was already dead? How is this possible? The 10 great demon kings were immortal existences. They also had immortal bodies. Even if they were sealed, their lives were limitless. This was because their bodies were a perfect balance of the 5 elements. Back when Muyu met Demon King White Ape at the second firmament, the shameless old monkey was still jumping up and down energetically. After he escaped, he even smashed the entire mountain that sealed him with a mighty punch, scaring the few nascent soul human youths. The 10 great demon kings couldn't be killed. If one wanted to kill them, the only way to kill them was to extract all the spiritual energy around them and let the spiritual energy in their bodies gradually drain away. Only by relying on time to wear down their bodies and make them very weak could one kill them. At that time, Demon King White Ape was almost killed by people from the Gate of Hell. But now, Demon King White Ape was gradually recovering and had achieved his immortal body again. However, Demon King Desert Eagle's body had no signs of life. Impossible. Impossible. How could the great Demon King die? Impossible. Sikong Chiwen's originally fanatical expression suddenly became extremely frightened. He couldn't accept the fact that Demon King Desert Eagle was dead. He wanted to rush over to check on Demon King Desert Eagle's condition, but the array pattern on the altar flickered and sent him flying. Although the array pattern was weakening, it wasn't completely weakened yet. Muyu was also very puzzled. Demon King Desert Eagle had been trapped in the seal all this time. If Demon King White Ape didn't die, then Demon King Desert Eagle shouldn't have died under normal circumstances. Unless someone attacked Demon King Desert Eagle when he was weak like the evil people from the Gate of Hell. But that didn't make sense, because if the seal hadn't completely dissipated, no one could enter. Muyu carefully checked the situation of the seal on the altar. This seal was similar to Demon King White Ape's seal, but maybe because of the different places, Muyu deduced that it would take a while for this seal to be completely broken. Maybe a few months, maybe a few years, but it definitely wouldn't be now. Everything seemed to be a bit confusing. What kind of existence was Sikong Chiwen? Even the demon race and the people from Stargate couldn't find Demon King Desert Eagle's seal. How could Sikong Chiwen alone find it? How could Sikong Chiwen have such great means to take down 200,000 self-cultivators in an instant and turn them all into sand sculptures? How could he have such a great ability alone? My lord, where are you? Come out quickly. Something happened to Demon King Desert Eagle. Sikong Chiwen frantically stood up and shouted anxiously. Chapter 548. Sikong Chiwen's voice echoed in the circular building. No one responded to him. Only countless sand sculptures were looking at him. The atmosphere was a bit strange. Muyu also held his breath. He was very alert as he hid behind the sand sculptures, paying attention to the situation around him. He also wanted to know who the lord that Sikong Chiwen mentioned was. A gust of wind blew over from an unknown place, sweeping up countless sand. The sand gathered around the altar, and finally, a figure gradually appeared in the sand. Muyu was slightly startled. How could it be him? The person that appeared beside Sikong Chiwen was none other than the mysterious hooded yellow-clothed man that Muyu saw in Sand Eagle King City. When Muyu was in the Array sect, he went on a mission with Master Lu. At that time, the heavens will not wait used the excuse of Chaos Array to send Master Lu and Zhou Jinglin to Sand Eagle King City to deal with the powerful Corpse Array. The powerful Corpse Array trapped everyone. At that time, it was this yellow-clothed man who opened the gates of Sand Eagle King City. In the maze-like underground, the yellow-clothed man didn't do anything to Muyu. He even left a portion of the demon spirits for Muyu. Muyu had never figured out who this mysterious yellow-robed man was or why he had helped her. However, at that time, the yellow-robed man's cultivation was very high. Even the demon clan and the people of the Sky Star sect could not do anything to him. He broke into Sand Eagle King's underground palace and took away many of the high-ranked demon spirits that Sand Eagle King had sealed away. While the demon clansmen and the Heavenly Star sect were fighting to the death for the Ghost Falcon, the yellow-robed man went straight to the coffin that no one cared about. Finally, he took out a stone coffin from the coffin and left the Sand Eagle King City with the stone coffin. And at this moment, the yellow-clothed man was stepping on that stone coffin. Sikong Chuan knelt at the yellow-clothed man's feet and anxiously said, "Lord, something happened to Sand Eagle King. Quickly think of something." The yellow-clothed man snorted and ignored Sikong Chuan. Instead, he turned his gaze to Muyu and said, "Still hiding and not coming out?" Muyu was startled. The other party actually discovered him. He pondered for a moment and finally walked out from behind the sand sculpture. He took a step forward and floated in the air, looking at the yellow-clothed man. "Muyu, you didn't become a sand sculpture." Sikong Chiwen was furious. He stood up and rushed towards Muyu with all his spiritual power in his body. "You're looking for death," Muyu shouted. At this moment, Sikong Chiwen was already at the form synthesis stage. His speed was unimaginably fast. His voice was still in the same place, but he had already arrived in front of Muyu, and a fist blasted towards her. Muyu frowned. Runes appeared around him. His shadow sword suddenly appeared in front of Sikong Chiwen and collided with Sikong Chiwen's powerful punch. Meanwhile, countless tree branches appeared around Muyu. His entire body moved away with the help of the wood spirit. Boom! There was a strong explosion, and Muyu kept retreating. Runes appeared under his feet, and the heavenly constellation formation disappeared with him. When he reappeared, he was already on the other side. Sikong Chiwen was really scary. If Muyu hadn't been on guard at all times, he would have been killed by this punch from a form synthesis stage cultivator. "Blazing Bone Scorpion, don't touch him," the yellow-clothed man said. Sikong Chiwen stopped and stared at Muyu fiercely. But he's a human. A human is not allowed to tarnish the great Demon King's holy land. "What? Do you want to disobey my order?" the yellow-clothed man said coldly. Sikong Chiwen's face became extremely pale. He quickly lowered his head and didn't dare to speak. "Blazing Bone Scorpion? Demon clansman, is the real Sikong Chiwen dead?" Muyu asked. He remembered someone saying that Sikong Chiwen was originally an ordinary Aurus core stage self-cultivator. However, one time when he was crossing the desert with a caravan, the entire caravan disappeared mysteriously when they passed by the Death Desert. Only Sikong Chiwen returned to Clearwater City alive. From then on, Sikong Chiwen seemed to have changed into a different person. He became an invincible dark horse on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard and caused a huge commotion among the cultivators. However, it seemed that this dark horse wasn't the real Sikong Chiwen, but a demon in disguise. However, there was one thing that Muyu didn't understand. If Sikong Chiwen was a demon in disguise, how did he hide from the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard? The Supreme Immortal Leaderboard would identify each person. Only then would it be accurate. Everyone knew Sikong Chiwen through the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. This couldn't be faked. Sikong Chiwen isn't dead. He's living well in the Blazing Bone Scorpion's body. The Blazing Bone Scorpion has only taken over his body and consciousness, the yellow-robed man said calmly. Take over the body and consciousness? How could a demon have such a method? Muyu found it unbelievable. It was very difficult to take over a person's soul. Even a God Soul formation or God Soul talisman could only temporarily control a person. It couldn't take over the body and consciousness. Only someone like Muyu and the rest who had Spirit Lord Yumeng in their bodies could take over the body and consciousness. According to Muyu's knowledge, other Yumon couldn't take over a person's body. This was because the human body was in balance with the 5 elements and would reject the Yumon. Muyu and the rest were babies who had died prematurely. They just happened to survive. As for the demon clansmen, it was even more impossible for them to have such a heaven-defying ability. Otherwise, they would have taken over a human's body and gradually consumed them. There must be something strange going on. Was all of this caused by you? Muyu asked as he pointed at the surrounding self-cultivators who had been turned into sand sculptures. The yellow-robed man didn't answer Muyu. His entire body was emitting an earthy yellow light. It was very mellow and rich. A faint pressure was circulating around his body. He looked at the blazing bone scorpion and said coldly, "Do you think your sand eagle demon king is dead?" The blazing bone scorpion's face was filled with bewilderment. He said earnestly, "My lord, do you know what happened to the demon king? He's fine. He just lost his heart." The sarcophagus under the yellow-robed man's feet slowly floated up. He stretched out a hand and gently touched the sarcophagus. Lost his heart? But I've never heard of it. The blazing bone scorpion was puzzled. Even a demon would die immediately after losing their heart. How could the sand eagle demon king be fine after losing his heart? The yellow-robed man said, "Don't use your shallow knowledge to judge a demon king. Every demon king has a way to protect themselves. Before the war with the humans, they had already made ample preparations. Even if they were captured, they would find an opportunity to escape. Before they were sealed, they had already thought of ways to use demonic arts to transmit something of theirs. This allowed the demon race to use this thing to find their sealed place." You mean to say that Desert Hawk Demon King dug out his own heart before he was sealed? Muyu found it somewhat inconceivable. Shouldn't they rely on the Ghost Falcon to find the Sand Eagle Demon King? Back then, the demon race and the people of Stargate were fighting over the Ghost Falcon. In the end, Muyu benefited from it. However, Muyu still didn't know how to use the Ghost Falcon. The yellow-robed man glanced at Muyu and said, "The demon race and the people of Stargate speculated that the Ghost Falcon could find the Sand Eagle Demon King. In fact, the Ghost Falcon could only find the Sand Eagle Demon King when he summoned it. However, the Sand Eagle Demon King lost his heart and fell into a deep slumber. How could he summon the Ghost Falcon?" Muyu frowned. It was no wonder that when everyone was fighting over the Ghost Falcon in Sand Eagle Royal City, only the yellow-robed man didn't care. He only took the coffin and left. It turned out that he already knew that the Ghost Falcon wasn't the key to finding the Sand Eagle Demon King's sealed place. You mean to say that the stone coffin contains the Sand Eagle Demon King's heart? Muyu was surprised. Demonic arts were very strange. Back when he was at the Second Firmament, Demon Monarch White Ape seemed to have used demonic arts to send his inner core back to the Second Firmament Demon's underground palace. This caused him to lose his cultivation level. After Qiao Shui obtained the White Ape Demon King's inner core, she also relied on the inner core to find the White Ape Demon King's sealed place. They only wanted to ensure that the White Ape Demon King wouldn't be harmed after he broke free from the seal. The other cultivators were able to find the White Ape Demon King because of the earth-shattering commotion caused by the seal being broken. Qiao Shui and the others had found the White Ape Demon King a few days ago and had been waiting for the seal to be completely broken. The Sand Eagle Demon King should have used the same demonic arts to transmit his heart back to the underground palace in Sand Eagle Royal City. The underground palace's existence was probably to protect some important things on the Demon King's body from being eroded by the seal. It also allowed the other demon race members to bring these things to the Demon King before the seal disappeared to ensure the Demon King's safety. The blazing bone scorpion said in surprise, "Sir, is the Sand Eagle Demon King's heart really inside?" The yellow-robed man gently knocked on the sarcophagus, and the lid of the sarcophagus slowly slid open. A majestic aura poured out from the sarcophagus, causing the blazing bone scorpion to retreat a few steps. However, his face was filled with excitement because he couldn't be mistaken about this majestic aura. It was the aura of the Sand Eagle Demon King. Muyu was surprised to hear a slight breathing sound. When he was in the Sand Eagle Royal City, he also heard this breathing sound in the underground palace. He felt very curious. Could the heart be breathing? A shriveled heart emerged from the sarcophagus and was held in the yellow-robed man's hand. The heart was opening and closing as if it was really breathing. However, it looked lifeless, and the loss of spiritual power was very serious. The Sand Eagle Demon King has a 7 orifices exquisite heart. He is different from the other demon kings. His inner core is fused with his heart. Therefore, in order to ensure that his inner core isn't destroyed by the seal, he could only use demonic arts to transmit his heart back to the underground palace. Without his heart, he can only fall into a deep sleep. The pitiful demon clansmen in the other royal cities thought that the exquisite sand eagle on your body was his heart. The yellow-robed man glanced at Muyu. Every demon king had their own people. The secret of the Sand Eagle Demon King was not something that the demon clansmen of other demon kings could pry into. The exquisite sand eagle on Muyu's body was only inhabited by a ghost falcon. Other than that, it had no other use. I don't understand. You said that you are a human. Then why are you helping the Sand Eagle Demon King? Asked Muyu. The yellow-robed man's hand lit up with earth-yellow spiritual power. The spiritual power circulated and slowly wrapped around the shriveled heart. You will understand. The shriveled heart absorbed the earth-yellow spiritual power. Following that, it swelled up as if it was inhaling air. It even began to beat rhythmically. The Sand Eagle Demon King, whose eyes were tightly shut in the seal, suddenly trembled. Then he slowly opened his eyes. His eyes flickered with a red light. He raised his head and looked at the yellow-robed man. His gaze landed on the heart in the yellow-robed man's hand. Lord Demon King, the blazing bone scorpion, was overjoyed. He hurriedly knelt down before the Sand Eagle Demon King. The Sand Eagle Demon King ignored the blazing bone scorpion. Instead, he looked indifferently at the yellow-robed man. His red pupils flickered with killing intent. You know that once the seal is lifted, I will definitely kill you. No one expected that the first thing the Sand Eagle Demon King said after waking up would be to kill the yellow-robed man. Lord Demon King, what did you say? It was this lord who helped me find you. Why are you? The blazing bone scorpion looked at the Sand Eagle Demon King in confusion. He did not understand why the Sand Eagle Demon King wanted to kill his savior. Let me think. If I destroy your heart, even if you don't die, you won't be able to wake up, right? The yellow-robed man snorted. You dare. The blazing bone scorpion had already realized that something was wrong. He stood up and shouted at the yellow-robed man. The yellow-robed man only glanced at him indifferently. Then, the blazing bone scorpion's face revealed a painful expression. He collapsed to the ground in fear and wailed in pain. Don't forget, I'm the one who gave you your life. The yellow-robed man looked at the blazing bone scorpion with disdain. Chapter 549. The Desert Eagle Demon King was a very handsome man. After he woke up, his aura was very strong. His every movement exuded the demeanor of a king. But his eyes were very indifferent and flashed with a demonic red light. It was very strange. At this moment, the atmosphere between the Desert Eagle Demon King and the yellow-robed man was very strange. They were at daggers drawn, and their eyes were filled with endless killing intent. The spiritual energy around them was restless and restless. If the seal on the altar had not been lifted, Muyu was sure that a battle would have broken out at any moment. But right now, the yellow-robed man clearly had the initiative. You've already woken me up once. What do you want to do this time? The Desert Eagle Demon King stared at the yellow-robed man and shifted his gaze to Muyu. He frowned slightly. Then, he saw the countless sand eagles around them and was slightly startled. You're a smart man. You should know what I want to do. The yellow-robed man's voice was very calm. The Desert Eagle Demon King's face finally showed anger. He said coldly, You want to take over my army? You can control consciousness, and I can control puppets. It's best if we work together, the yellow-robed man said. That's my army, the Desert Eagle Demon King said coldly. Now it's mine. The yellow spiritual energy in the yellow-robed man's hand dimmed. The beating of the heart in his hand also slowed down. The Desert Eagle Demon King's face turned pale. The heart was closely related to the Desert Eagle Demon King's condition. If the yellow-robed man injected spiritual energy into the Desert Eagle Demon King's heart, the Desert Eagle Demon King would wake up. Once the heart lost the nourishment of spiritual energy, the Desert Eagle Demon King would fall into a deep sleep. I say, I don't care what you two want to do. I only have one question. What do you want to do by capturing so many self-cultivators? Muyu interrupted. The yellow-robed man was very patient with Muyu. He said indifferently, to make my puppets. Puppets? You want to control 200,000 self-cultivators? Muyu frowned. He had an ominous premonition in his heart. The ability to control 200,000 self-cultivators was too heaven-defying. Even if Muyu wanted to use the Divine Soul Array to control so many people, she would need the help of the Array Palace. Moreover, these people could only be controlled in the Divine Soul Array. How could the yellow-robed man control 200,000 people? He looked at the struggling, blazing bone scorpion on the ground and recalled what the yellow-clothed man had said about Sikong Chiwen's consciousness and body being taken over by the blazing bone scorpion. He seemed to have understood something. Do you want to know? Let me show you. The yellow-robed man waved his hand, and countless white dots of light suddenly appeared in the air. They were densely packed, like the twinkling stars in the sky. At first glance, there were tens of thousands of them. This is... Muyu's eyes widened. He was deeply shocked by the scene before him. Demon spirit. Good heavens. It's the demon spirits that the minions stole from us last time. Oh no, there's more. Little Shuai secretly poked his head out, drooling uncontrollably. Muyu felt that it was inconceivable. There were so many demon spirits. It was even more than what he had seen in Sand Eagle Royal City. The yellow-robed man had stolen many high-level demon spirits from the Sand Eagle Royal City's demon sealing pool. However, there were only a little over 1,000 demon spirits. But right now, Muyu was looking at tens of thousands of demon spirits. Although the ratio of these tens of thousands of high-level demon spirits wasn't high, being able to obtain so many demon spirits was already a terrifying matter. How did this yellow-robed man do it? These demon spirits all have demon spirits sealed within them. Don't tell me that the minion is planning to transfer the demon spirits to these self-cultivators? Little Shuai muttered. Muyu's face slightly changed. Little Shuai's words made him think of the blazing bone scorpion and Sikong Chiwen. Could it be that the blazing bone scorpion wasn't a demon race, but one of these demon spirits? It only used the Sand Eagle Demon King to transform into a demon beast? He asked in a deep voice, do you plan to turn these 200,000 self-cultivators into Sikong Chiwen? The yellow-robed man didn't deny it. Demon spirits are ultimately demon beasts. The Sand Eagle Demon King has the heart of 7 orifices and can control the consciousness of demon beasts. As for me, I have a way to take away a human's consciousness. I can fuse the human's consciousness with the demon spirit, allowing the originally ignorant demon spirit to have the thoughts of a human and also possess the powerful cultivation of a demon beast. What do you think of my masterpiece? Muyu was shocked when he heard this. So this was how Sikong Chiwen, this dark horse, came about? You have a way to take away a human's consciousness? Muyu suddenly remembered that his uncle's son, Mu Qing Fan, also had his consciousness taken away by Sikong Chiwen. This meant that the instigator was actually the yellow-robed man. The yellow-robed man's origin was very mysterious. However, he didn't have any killing intent towards Muyu. He had also helped Muyu twice. This made Muyu think that the yellow-robed man wasn't a bad person. Who would have thought that the yellow-robed man would do such an unacceptable thing? A combination of demon and human? Isn't that a transvestite? Little Shuai muttered. I prefer to call them demons. The yellow-robed man had already raised his hand. Countless yellow sand gushed out from the ground and wrapped around all the demon spirits. The demonic soul within the demonic spirit rushed out and roared in the air. These demon spirits came in all shapes and sizes, from rank 3 to rank 7 demon spirits. There were double-headed wolves, storm tigers, purple caltrop pythons, soul-devouring wolves. The The roars of countless demon spirits resounded in the surroundings. They intertwined and rose one after another, as if they were resisting the yellow-robed man's control. However, the demon spirits were the host of these demon spirits. At this moment, all the demon spirits were wrapped in yellow sand. Even if these demon spirits wanted to struggle, it was useless. "Your turn," the yellow-robed man said to the sand eagle demon king indifferently. "Remember what I said. I will take back what is mine in the future." The sand eagle demon king coldly snorted. He was very angry, but he didn't refuse. His eyes lit up with a demonic red light. Then, the heart in the yellow-robed man's hand suddenly exploded with a dazzling red light. Countless red lights shot out from the heart and intertwined in the air. They drew an arc in the air and rushed towards each demon spirit. Then, each demon spirit hid in the demon spirit. After each demon spirit was hit by the red light, the originally gray and transparent demon spirit suddenly became bright red. The roars gradually stopped, and the eyes of each demon spirit became dull. The demon spirits were wrapped in sand. With a bright red demon spirit, they rushed towards the sand sculptures around the wall in an orderly manner. There were 200,000 self-cultivators. Everyone's cultivation was different. There were cultivators from the Chi disciple stage to the soul severing stage. Demon spirits could only be produced from rank 3 demon spirits. Therefore, when these demon spirits were looking for hosts, they all chose cultivators that were suitable for their cultivation. This was the only way to make the best use of the host's strength. There were close to 200,000 self-cultivators and a little more than 100,000 demon spirits. Therefore, it was more than enough for the demon spirits to choose a host. The demon spirits wrapped in sand easily integrated into each sand sculpture. The demon spirits also disappeared into the sand sculptures. About 100,000 sand sculptures trembled slightly. The sand on their bodies seemed to come alive and gradually integrated into their bodies. The self-cultivators' original appearance was revealed again. The eyes of these self-cultivators who were possessed were very dull at first. There was even a wild, bestial look in their eyes. They were not human at all. Soon, a trace of clarity appeared in each self-cultivator's eyes. It was as if they were more energetic and more rational. The aura of each self-cultivator became stronger and stronger. The weakest of them was in the Jindan period. The strongest was in the body integration stage. There were very few people in the body integration stage among these self-cultivators. Many of them used their own great magical powers to escape. Therefore, the rank 7 demon spirits could only reside in the bodies of the cultivators in the soul-severing stage. But even so, the aura of each puppet was very domineering and strong. Even if they were puppets in the Jindan period, their aura was still several times stronger than that of ordinary cultivators in the Jindan period. Every puppet moved their muscles and bones excitedly and curiously looked at their own bodies. Their eyes were filled with the joy of being reborn. Some of them could not help but look up to the sky and roar. After a moment of restlessness, the eyes of all the puppets finally fell on the body of the sand eagle demon king on the altar. Greetings to the great sand eagle demon king. All the transformed puppets suddenly knelt on the ground and shouted loudly. Their shouts shook the heavens and the earth. The airwaves were so strong that it almost broke the whole building. These puppets had become a combination of a demon and a human. They had all the thoughts and memories of a human, but the main consciousness was the demon spirit. Therefore, they still believed in the sand eagle demon king in their hearts. However, they did not know that all their life activities were in the hands of the yellow-robed man. The sand eagle demon king said coldly, "In the future, all of you must listen to his orders." When he said this, he was filled with endless anger. Originally, the demon race had sealed many demon spirits. The sand eagle demon king could have resurrected these demon spirits and turned them into a valiant army in preparation to fight for territory with the human race in the future. However, the appearance of the yellow-robed man completely ruined his plan. The sand eagle demon king could not stop the yellow-robed man's actions. Not to mention that the day of the seal lifting had not yet arrived. Even if he broke free of the seal, the most important heart was in the hands of the yellow-robed man. He had no room to bargain. The Sand Eagle Demon King could only listen to the yellow-robed man's orders. Once he disobeyed, his heart would wither without the nourishment of spiritual energy, and he would fall into a deep sleep. If his heart was destroyed, then he would never wake up. We obey the Demon King's orders. All the puppets responded respectfully. Then they knelt down towards the yellow-robed man and said, "Greetings to my lord." The yellow-robed man stood there silently. The blazing bone scorpion at his feet had already stopped moaning. Its face was extremely pale, and it no longer dared to be disrespectful to the yellow-robed man. Muyu looked at all of this in disbelief. The sand made his heart tremble. The sand wrapped around the demon spirit, and all the sand merged into the cultivator's body. All the signs indicated that the yellow-robed man could control the sand. After a long time, Muyu asked, "You are too young? It is impossible for the demon race to control sand. To be able to turn 200,000 cultivators into sand sculptures and have such a terrifying method, I can't think of anyone else besides Tu Yumeng who can do it." The yellow-robed man wore a hood and had never revealed his true appearance. Muyu guessed that under the hood was Tu Yumeng's image. However, Muyu had seen Tu Yumeng before. They were similar to stone monsters. They were tall and sturdy and were not as thin as the yellow-robed man. The yellow-robed man was silent for a long time before saying, "I am the same as you. I am a human." "Impossible. A human cannot control sand." Muyu suddenly froze when he said this. "You can't be impossible. You can't be him." Muyu clenched his teeth. Just like how he could control trees, there was another person who could control sand. "Have you finally remembered who I am?" The yellow-robed man slowly took off his hood and revealed his true appearance. Chapter 550. Senior Brother Xiangnan. His third senior brother used to be dull and honest. He stood aloof from worldly affairs and liked to slack off. He was easygoing and wouldn't frown even if the sky fell. Muyu didn't think he would. However, the Xiangnan in front of him seemed to be a completely different person. There was a hint of ruthlessness between his eyebrows. His expression was so resolute that it was unfamiliar. He no longer had his honest smile. Xiangnan's temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. He was very thin, but the aura he exuded was very thick and heavy. Especially that pair of dignified eyes. There was an indescribable aura. The moment Muyu saw him, it was as if a stone was pressing down on Muyu's body. This wasn't Xiangnan at all. "You are Hutu, not Xiangnan." Muyu clenched his fists. Back then in the Nine Heavens Sealing Fiend formation, Xiao Shui's spirit Lord Xianming had lost control, causing everyone to be affected by Xuanming's terrifying emotional death ability. Even Muyu herself had sunk into her own sad memories. With Deadwood Daddy's help, Muyu broke free from Xianming's love blight in time and helped Xiao Shui suppress Xianming. Everyone broke free from Xianming's love blight, but Xiangnan didn't defeat Spirit Lord Shui Yumeng in his body. Hutu wasn't sealed by the Nine Heavens Sealing Devil formation. Xie Bulo wanted to kill Xiangnan, but Feng Haochen stopped him. Xie Bulo forbade Xiangnan from taking even half a step out of the 50-mile garden. Therefore, Muyu always thought that Xiangnan was still in Luo Shang's small courtyard. However, he never expected that the yellow-robed man was Xiangnan. Xiangnan's eyes flickered. He looked at Muyu calmly and said, "I'm not Hutu, I'm Xiangnan." "Impossible. Senior brother Xiangnan would never do such a thing." "Hutu, let go of my senior brother." Muyu was so angry that the formation runes around him started surging. Then, he charged towards Xiangnan. A shadow sword materialized in the void, and a sharp sword chi slashed out. The domineering sword will of the sky, sword 9 draws, poured out mercilessly and blasted Xiangnan. However, Xiangnan's arm turned into a translucent diamond and grabbed Muyu's sword. A powerful yellow spirit force flowed out and neutralized Muyu's sword energy. "Your shadow sword technique seems to have become even more powerful. Have you already learned the sky, sword 9 guide sword formation? Xiongnan asked slowly. You're not my senior brother. I don't need to explain anything to you. Muyu shouted angrily. Xiongnan exerted a little force and pushed Muyu away. His cultivation level was clearly much higher than Muyu's. Muyu stepped back and stabilized himself in midair by stepping on the array pattern under his feet. He glared at Xiongnan angrily. You won't even give me a chance to explain? You weren't like this before, Xiongnan said. Muyu looked at his senior brother, who was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Xiongnan had become very calm, as if he had been reborn overnight. He was no longer as honest and easy to bully as before. No one would have thought that the Xiongnan in front of him was the lazy person who had tried every possible way to avoid cultivating and sleeping on Luochen Mountain. Muyu still couldn't believe that Xiongnan would do such a terrifying thing. You should have been in the 50-mile garden in the south. Siebulo was watching over Empress 2 in your body. Muyu resisted the urge to attack. There were many things that he didn't understand. He really did need an explanation from Xiongnan. Moreover, he couldn't defeat Xiongnan. Xiongnan was currently ranked 9th on the Supreme Immortal Ranking Board. That was a very powerful position. If he didn't have true strength, he wouldn't have been able to reach 9th place. Xiongnan pondered for a moment and said, I left the 50-mile garden in the south a long time ago. Have you forgotten? Wan Wan from the Heavenly Demon Sect came to report that something had happened to Elder Deadwood. You wanted to ask Siebulo for help, but Wan Wan said that Siebulo had secretly escorted Master back to the Moyen Mountain Range. At that time, I understood that I should leave the 50-mile garden in the south. At that time? Muyu gritted his teeth. Deadwood Daddy had been kidnapped by Tian Bue, so he had gone to the valley alone to look for Deadwood Daddy. Luo Shang, Qingyan, and Xiao Shui had followed him for his own safety. Everyone had ignored Xiongnan. Qing Mei had followed Master back to the Moyen Mountain Range. Only Lan Ling, and Xiongnan had been in the small courtyard. Xiongnan must have left the 50-mile garden when Lan Ling wasn't paying attention. Why? Why did you leave the 50-mile garden in the south? Did Empress 2 encourage you to leave? Muyu asked in a low voice. Ever since Deadwood Daddy's accident, he hadn't contacted his other senior brothers. He wanted to face Deadwood Daddy alone. He wanted to learn array formations and learn Deadwood Daddy's array techniques. He wanted to find a way to break the 9 heavens sealing demon formation. However, he hadn't expected Xiongnan to leave at that time. I've thought about it for a long time. I don't want to be silent anymore. I want to do what I want to do, Xiongnan said slowly. What you want to do is to turn so many people into your puppets. That's not what you want to do. That's what Empress 2 wants to do. Muyu looked around at the self-cultivators whose bodies had been taken over by demon souls. He felt very uncomfortable. Originally, these self-cultivators had only come to the desert to watch the competition between the 3 of them. Everyone had come from all over the 3 continents to witness the battle, either to join in the fun or to catch a glimpse of the 3 famous geniuses on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. However, who would have thought that this battle was just a gimmick that Xiongnan had asked Sikong Chiwen to create? If 200,000 people died because of this battle, and the culprit was Muyu's senior brother, he would have to bear the blame. Empress 2 has already fused with me. I'm now a complete person, Xiongnan said. Fused? What does that mean? Muyu had never heard of Spirit Lord Yumeng being fused with before. If that was possible, why didn't Feng Haochen let them do it? Why did he use the 9 heavens sealing demon formation to seal Spirit Lord Yumeng? Xiongnan looked at his junior brother quietly. This junior brother of his would always mysteriously appear in important places. Back in Sand Eagle Royal City, he had recognized the Shadow Clone Sword in Muyu's hand. At that time, he didn't want to expose his identity in front of Muyu, so he only did what he wanted to do and left. However, today, Muyu appeared again and saw him do what he wanted to do. After Spirit Lord Yumeng reincarnated into our bodies, he became an inseparable part of our souls. He only retained his own consciousness. They don't accept us, and we don't accept them. Therefore, we fight for control of our bodies with them. If we accept their existence, they will accept us. Then, we will fuse with Spirit Lord Yumeng and become a complete person. Xiang Nan explained slowly. Therefore, right now, I have everything that Empress Tu has, but I can also retain my original memories and emotions. Even if you're right, why would you accept Spirit, Lord Yumeng? There, Muyu suddenly couldn't continue. What kind of race was the Yuman? Ever since he learned of the Threefold Palace's scheme, he no longer had a one-sided view of the war between the Yuman and the human race. Is the Yuman really as evil as you say? Is the war between the Yuman and the human race really unavoidable? Have you never thought about who the masterminds and beneficiaries of this war are? Xiangnan's gaze became very deep. His eyes seemed to flicker with endless anger and unwillingness, as if he wanted to change something. Muyu fell silent. He knew that the masterminds and beneficiaries of the war between the Yuman and the human race were actually the despicable guardians of the Threefold Palace. In order for the Threefold Palace's power to remain unshaken, they needed to rely on the slaughter caused by the war to create soul power and consolidate their ruling position. Whether or not the Yuman really wanted to invade the human race's territory was all based on the Threefold Palace's words. All the self-cultivators revered the Threefold Palace like gods and followed their lead. They didn't dare to resist, nor did they have the ability to resist. The Threefold Palace's words were orders to all the self-cultivators. Therefore, when the Threefold Palace said that the Yuman wanted to invade the human race's territory, all the self-cultivators pointed their weapons at the Yuman passionately. You look like you know something. I'm sure Spirit Lord Gomong must have told you this before. I don't want the Threefold Palace to continue treating everyone like idiots, so I want to end it all with my own strength and destroy the Threefold Palace. Xiangnan's gaze was very determined. Destroy the Threefold Palace. Muyu clenched his fists. Destroying the Threefold Palace was his goal too. The Threefold Palace was a sinister and filthy thing that shouldn't exist in this world. For his own selfishness and the pursuit of immortality, he had killed Mu Yu's Deadwood daddy and even wanted to kill Mu Yu's master, Feng Haochen. None of this was forgivable. However, Mu Yu couldn't accept Xiang Nan wanting to control the self-cultivators to fight against the Threefold Palace. The Threefold Palace controlled all the self-cultivators, but at least they had their own consciousness. However, Xiangnan's actions were equivalent to turning the self-cultivators into hosts for demon beasts. It was equivalent to depriving the self-cultivators of their right to live. Your goal is to destroy the Threefold Palace, but you've taken away so many innocent lives. What's the difference between your actions and the Threefold Palaces? Muyu questioned. Bloodshed is the price to achieve great things. Even if they aren't under my control, they will still die under the meticulous schemes of the Threefold Palace in the future, won't they? Xiangnan said expressionlessly. Ever since Yuman was trapped in the Moyan Mountain Range by Feng Haochen, the war had stopped. Without the war, there were no more deaths. The Threefold Palace's source of power was about to dry up. It was an unprecedented crisis for the Threefold Palace, so they couldn't wait to start a war to generate more soul power. These 200,000 self-cultivators would definitely become cannon fodder on the battlefield in the future. They would become the souls of the dead under Yuman's hands and provide the Threefold Palace with the power to rule. They might be the victims of the war anyway, but Xiangnan chose to arrange their deaths in his own way. Even if you have so many puppets at your disposal, how can you defeat the Threefold Palace with your strength alone? Muyu didn't know what to think about this. Xiangnan might be right, but he couldn't agree with Xiangnan's decision. Everyone had the right to choose their own life. No one could casually arrange someone's death unless the person had a reason to die. This was Mu Yu's principle when it came to killing people. Xiangnan was silent for a moment before he said, "You can help me. If the four of us work together, we can definitely defeat the Threefold Palace." Mu Yu sighed. The Threefold Palace was like a towering mountain, and he was just an insignificant grass at the foot of the mountain. How could he threaten the Threefold Palace's supremacy? I won't help you. I don't want to see so many people become sacrifices for no reason, so I will definitely stop you. Muyu shook his head. He would do everything he could to destroy the Threefold Palace, but he would not do it in this way. I know you want to revive Senior Deadwood, but you can't control the power of life and death so easily. Hutu's memory is related to the power of life and death. It's too powerful, so it has a lot of limitations. Even if you can break the Nine Heavens demon sealing formation, you won't be able to revive anyone with it. Xiangnin said, I did revive Tian Ran at the Moyun mountain range. Muyu retorted, that's because Tian Ran wasn't dead yet. Senior Deadwood is different from Tian Ran. He's been dead for a long time. Your power of life and death is incomplete. You can't revive Senior Deadwood. Xiangnin said coldly, incomplete? What do you mean? Muyu's heart skipped a beat. He had to revive Deadwood Daddy. Deadwood Daddy had been living for others all his life. He should live for himself. Chapter 551. Muyu's face darkened. Do I have to accept and fuse with Gomong like you? Xiangnin nodded. After a long silence, Muyu asked, what's Hutu's ability? Every spirit Lord Yumeng had a very powerful ability. Just like Gomong's life and death in the blink of an eye, and Xianming's death and love, Hutu must have it too. You've already seen it. My ability is to control the consciousness. I can take away the consciousness of any cultivator who is enveloped by my sand. She could control the consciousness of others by using sand. She could also graft the consciousness of a demon beast, so that the demon beast would have human emotions and control the cultivator whose body was occupied by the demon beast consciousness. The reason why Xiangnan had failed in the Ninth Heaven sealing formation was largely because he was no match for Hutu, who had the ability to control the consciousness. Muyu looked at Xiangnan, who had changed dramatically, and asked, will I become as unreasonable as you after fusing with Gomong? Xiangnan shook his head. I'm not unreasonable. I just don't want to be fooled by the threefold palace anymore. It's Hutu who doesn't want to be fooled by the threefold palace. You have nothing to do with the threefold palace. You've been influenced by Hutu's thoughts. Muyu retorted solemnly. Xiangnan looked at Muyu quietly and said, you guys never knew what I went through when I was a child, did you? When Xiangnan was a child, Muyu was slightly startled. He really didn't know what Xiangnan had gone through when he was a child. Xiangnan had once said that he was the son of a farmer. Both his parents had died, and that was all. However, when they were in the Ninth Heaven sealing formation, Xiangnan was reminded of something unknown by Xianming's death and love. At that time, Xiangnan couldn't break free from those memories at all. Xiangnan started talking. He had never mentioned his past to his senior and junior brothers. Some things had been covered in dust for a long time, but they hadn't disappeared from his memory at all. A sorrowful look appeared on Xiangnan's face. When I was 3 years old, 2 cultivators appeared in the sky above our town. They were fighting each other. One of them was a middle-aged man in high spirits. His cultivation was very high. According to my estimation, his cultivation was even higher than mine. As for the other person, his entire body was filled with the white light of the holy God. He was so pure and holy that it made people feel reverence. I think you already know who he is. Someone from the threefold palace? Muyu asked in surprise. However, this didn't make sense. The threefold palace was an existence that could call the wind and summon the rain in the cultivation world. All the self-cultivators had to listen to their orders. How could there be someone who dared to fight with the people of the threefold palace? That's right, it's someone from the third palace. At that time, the middle-aged man had the upper hand and was about to kill the people from the threefold palace. However, that bastard from the threefold palace did something that I will never forget. Xiangnan's body began to tremble, as if he was recalling the painful past. His face turned hideous. That bastard from the threefold palace raised his hand and summoned an incomparably huge palm that instantly razed the entire town to the ground. None of the mortals in the town managed to escape, including my grandparents, my father, and my sister. All of my family, friends, and childhood playmates were annihilated by this palm. Xiangnan clenched his fists, his eyes bloodshot. So that's how Xiangnan lost his family. He was also furious. The people from the threefold palace were already very powerful back then. One palm was more than enough to destroy the entire town. But how could they dare to do such a thing so brazenly? The whole town died. I was the only one who survived. The soil protected me, and I sank into the ground. That's why I survived. I saw with my own eyes that countless white lights flew out from all over the town and headed for that bastard in the threefold palace. His strength instantly increased, and he killed the middle-aged man instead. My family was all dead. A moment ago, everyone in the town was still admiring the grace of the immortals in the sky. The next moment, they were all reduced to ashes. I've been looking for the murderer for so many years. It wasn't until Hutu told me that I learned that the person emitting the white light was from the threefold palace. I also learned why the threefold palace killed the entire town. The white light was the sole power left behind by the dead. It was also the power that the threefold palace relied on to survive. The threefold palace could use a special method to collect the sole power of the dead to increase their own cultivation. Who would have thought that the people from the threefold palace would do something so inhumane just to defeat their opponent? The people from the threefold palace killed tens of thousands of people in the town just to defeat their opponent. So many lives were lost just like that. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of Xiangnan's eye. The teardrop rolled on the ground and turned into crystal-clear sand. Muyu's chest heaved up and down. He was filled with anger. Threefold Palace had killed Deadwood's father for their own selfish desires. In order to defeat their opponent, they had even killed the entire town to obtain strength. This sort of behavior was already intolerable by the heavens and earth. He looked at Xiang Nan in silence. In his eyes, Xiang Nan had always been an honest senior brother. He never cared about anything, and he never talked about his past. However, the truth was so cruel. He never thought that the threefold palace had destroyed Xiang Nan's family. So you want to fight against the threefold palace with your own strength? Muyu clenched his fists. Deadwood Daddy's death made him hate the threefold palace to the core. Just like Xiang Nan, he could never forgive the threefold palace. Watching my family die in front of me became a nightmare that I couldn't get rid of. I almost collapsed. I couldn't even bury my family because they didn't even leave behind a corpse. If Master hadn't found me, I might not have had the courage to live on. Everything Master taught me allowed me to gradually walk out of the shadow of that nightmare. I tried my best to make myself indifferent, to become lazy, and to like sleeping. Only then could I forget everything, but I was thinking about revenge all the time. Xiang Nan's voice sank. A large part of his personality was related to that incident. He did not care about other people's teasing. He had a gentle temper and was honest. Even if someone pointed at him and scolded him, he would still laugh foolishly. Compared to the nightmares he had when he was young, nothing else was worth mentioning. What I couldn't stand the most was that the threefold palace wanted to kill Master and take his immortal body after he gave me everything. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to merge with Hutu if I wanted to take revenge and protect Master. Only then can I have the power to take revenge. I had to leave the 50-mile garden and do what I wanted to do. A terrifying aura rose from Xiang Nan's body. It was restless. All the puppets were terrified. Muyu clenched his teeth. Xiang Nan's determination to take revenge spread to Muyu like a virus. He had the urge to destroy the threefold palace with Xiang Nan right now. However, he forcibly suppressed this impulse. He had his own principles when it came to doing things. Master sacrificed himself to protect these cultivators, but you're sending them to their deaths. You're going against Master's will. Muyu shook his head. Master sacrificed himself for them. But what did they do for Master? They only know how to submit to the threefold palace and listen to its orders. If they become the threefold palace's lackeys, they will become the threefold palace's souls sooner or later and become the source of its power. I'm just making their deaths more meaningful. Xiang said coldly. The cultivators were the threefold palace's tools. Xiang Nan wanted to use them as tools too. Master said that you have to live up to your conscience. If you think it's the right thing to do, then do it. If you think it's wrong, then don't do it, Muyu said. Xiang Nan might be right. Most of the cultivators would become the wraiths on the battlefield against the Yumon in the future. It was better for Xiong Nan to use them as tools against the threefold palace instead. However, Muyu did not agree with Xiong Nan. Everyone should choose their own life. Xiong Nan was basically taking the lives of others by force. Death was inevitable. It could be as heavy as Mount Tai or as light as a feather. However, in Muyu's opinion, even if a group of people wanted to die a spectacular death, it should be their choice instead of being forced to die. I always remember Master's words, so I always ask myself if I'm doing the wrong thing, but I don't think I'm doing anything wrong, Xiong Nan said seriously. Xiong Nan's thoughts had become extreme. Maybe it was because he had merged with Hutu, or maybe he was blinded by hatred, but he was no longer the honest Xiong Nan he used to be. If you insist on doing this, then I have to stop you. Besides, Master will recover his cultivation soon. We can rely on Master to fight against the threefold palace. Muyu's thoughts were completely different from Xiong Nan's. Even though he wanted to control the cultivators to fight against the threefold palace like Xiong Nan, he knew it was wrong. Xiong Nan stared at Muyu for a long time. He suddenly said coldly, "Muyu, it seems like you still don't know what happened at the Moyen Mountain Range, right?" Muyu frowned. What happened at the Moyen Mountain Range? The immortal confining prison has been removed a long time ago. Master is nowhere to be found. It hasn't been a year. Master can't have recovered his cultivation, but the immortal confining prison has disappeared on its own. What do you think Master is now? Xiong Nan's words were like a bolt from the blue, ringing in Muyu's ears. What? Muyu was shocked. You mean Master? Muyu did not dare to think further. The guardian of the threefold palace had always wanted to kill Feng Haochen and take his immortal body. However, because of the immortal confining prison, the guardian of the threefold palace had not been able to do it. Deadwood Daddy had once told him that the immortal confining prison would be fine as long as the array Heavenly Tao was alive. However, the array Heavenly Tao had already passed away. If the threefold palace obtained the array Heavenly Tao's spiritual origin, wouldn't it mean that he could control half of the immortal confining prison? His master's cultivation was only in the Jindan period. The guardian of the threefold palace was the most powerful being in the cultivation world. If he obtained half of the immortal confining prison, his master would not be able to fight against the guardian of the threefold palace. You're right. The guardian of the threefold palace has already attacked Master. The immortal confining prison in the Moyen Mountain Range is no longer under Master's control, Xiong Nan said slowly. Chapter 552. The guardian of the threefold palace had already made a move on his master. This sentence made Muyu tremble all over. If the threefold palace captured their master, then they would also seize their master's immortal body. At that time, if they were to face the guardian of the threefold palace, wouldn't that mean that they would be facing their own master? No, I don't believe it. Muyu shook his head. How could something happen to his master? If someone else had said this casually, Muyu would definitely have cursed them for talking nonsense. However, when it came from Xiong Nan, he immediately lost his composure. Xiong Nan was a senior brother and also the disciple of Jianing and Qinfeng. You could go to Luochen Mountain and check if it's true, Xiong Nan said. Cultivators at the spirit-severing stage weren't allowed to enter the Moyen Mountain Range. Perhaps even nascent soul stage cultivators couldn't enter now. If Muyu wanted to verify the authenticity of this information, he only needed to go to the Moyen Mountain Range. If he could enter the Moyen Mountain Range, it meant that the heaven and earth array had already dissipated. The heaven and earth array was too powerful. With Feng Haochen's terrifying cultivation as the base of the array, Feng Haochen wouldn't be able to escape from the immortal confinement prison by himself. Are you still going to stop me? Xiong Nan looked at Muyu. I remember that this person framed Senior Deadwood. The threefold palace is behind Stargate. Aren't you going to take revenge? There were still dozens of sand sculptures on the walls that hadn't been possessed by the demon soul. Xiong Nan snapped his fingers, and a sand sculpture quickly fell from the wall and stood in front of Xiong Nan. The sand on the sculpture's head suddenly scattered and danced in the air, revealing Tian Bue's loathsome face. Who are you? How dare you capture me? Stargate won't let you go. Tian Bue shouted in both shock and anger. Other than his head, his entire body was tightly bound by the sand, and he couldn't move. To his horror, he found that he could not circulate the spiritual energy in his body. The yellow sand was very strange, destroying his last hope of escape. Stargate? Who do you think you are? Xiangnan looked at Tian Bue mockingly. Mu Yu's chest was filled with endless hatred. When Tian Jiansheng saved Tian Buchuan, he thought that he would have to wait a long time before he could kill Tian Buchuan. He never thought that he would see him again so soon. You deserve to die. Mu Yu's tone was extremely cold. Endless killing intent filled the air. Tian Buchi finally saw Mu Yu. There was no sand on Mu Yu's body. He was not bound by the sand. Mu Yu, if you dare to kill me, Stargate will definitely kill every single member of the Mu family in Clearwater City. Tian Bue's face was already contorted. He no longer had that hypocritical smile and gentle expression. Xiangnan said indifferently, "If you die here, who can prove that Mu Yu killed you? Is this your dog?" As soon as Xiangnan finished speaking, a figure stepped out from the wall and appeared in front of Tian Bue. It was Tian Jiansheng, who was in the form synthesis stage. "Uncle Cheng, save me." The moment Tian Bue saw Tian Jiansheng, he seemed to be grasping at straws. He shouted anxiously. Tian Jiansheng looked at Tian Bue sinisterly and smiled sarcastically. "Do you expect me to save a vicious, smiling tiger like you? You're not Uncle Cheng. Who are you?" Tian Bue was slightly stunned. The Tian Jiansheng in his memory wouldn't have dared to speak to him like this. "Of course I'm your Uncle Cheng. However, I'll be here to watch you die. Don't worry, your father will only know that Sikong Chiwen killed you, not Mu Yu." "What did you say?" Tian Bue was shocked and furious. "People like you don't deserve to live in this world." Black and white runes appeared under Mu Yu's feet. The 8 trigrams array formed a vortex in front of his chest. A 7th-order explosive pill had been reduced to powder and merged with the runes. The aura of the form synthesis stage emanated from the runes and enveloped Tian Bue's heart. "You can't kill me," Tian Bue shouted in horror. The shadow clone sword trembled slightly as it was pulled out from the vortex of exploding pills by Mu Yu. The sword chi was filled with surging killing intent as it condensed into the shape of a sword in the air. Then it chopped down towards the sky. "No," Tian Bue's terrified voice echoed. However, the shadow clone sword had already cut him in half. The sword chi instantly shredded his body, leaving only an unwilling head with open eyes. It rolled to Mu Yu's feet. "You should have thought of this day when you attacked Deadwood Daddy." Mu Yu stepped on Tian Bue's face. He hated Tian Bue's hypocritical face. He always showed a gentle smile in the cultivation world, but behind his back, he did disgusting things. Tian Bue's achievements were all thanks to his father's help. Tian Bue defeated so many extreme immortals because his father, Tian Yuehen, asked Shadow Killer Qingming to secretly attack the extreme immortals who challenged his son. The runes under Mu Yu's feet surged and completely destroyed Tian Bue's head. Mu Ling came out of the shadow clone sword. He seemed to be devouring something. He controlled some vague white light into his body. That was the sole power that provided power to the 3 palaces after a person died. Mu Yu took a deep breath. Killing Tian Bue should have been a gratifying thing for him, but he knew that there was nothing to be happy about. He still had a long way to go before he could resurrect Deadwood Daddy. Deadwood Daddy had wanted to use this formation to kill Tian Bue and show Mu Yu his ability. Now, Mu Yu finally did it for Deadwood Daddy. Tian Bue was already dead. There was still the 3 palaces. Xiangnan watched indifferently as Mu Yu killed Tian Bue. He didn't even frown during the entire process. Tian Bue is an important chess piece of mine. I can fuse his consciousness with the demon's soul and let him return to Stargate. In the future, he will become the gate master of Stargate and help me gather information from the 3 palaces. But you didn't stop me from killing him. Mu Yu looked at Xiangnan quietly. Killing Tian Bue had helped him cross a hurdle in his heart. If you want to kill him, he can't live. I'm your senior brother, Xiang Nan said indifferently, as if it was a simple matter. Muyu pursed his lips. If Tian Bue was controlled by Xiang Nan like Sikong Chuan, he would definitely be a powerful puppet given his status as the young master of Stargate. However, Xiang Nan chose to let Muyu kill Tian Bue because he knew Muyu hated Tian Bue. He didn't want Muyu to regret. Thank you. Muyu clenched his fists. You still won't help me, right? Xiang Nan asked. Muyu shook his head. Xiang Nan had helped him kill Tian Bue, but he still didn't want to see the demon soul take over the self-cultivator's consciousness. I won't force you. You knew Qingyan and Luo Shang would stop you, but you still tried to undo the Nine Heavens sealing formation to revive Senior Deadwood regardless of the consequences. I'm doing what I want to do too, Xiangnan said. Muyu didn't know how to respond to Xiangnan. Deadwood Daddy's death had made him desperate to undo the Nine Heavens sealing formation to revive Deadwood Daddy. He knew everyone would oppose him, but he still chose to do it without hesitation. Xiangnan was the same. His method was extreme. No one would support him, but he still chose to do it without hesitation. Muyu suddenly understood what Xiangnan was trying to do. Are you two done messing around? 3 silhouettes flashed out of the tunnel and appeared beside them. They were Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Shimen Wuji. Qingyan had a stern look on his face. He scanned the surroundings angrily. He had never gotten angry at his junior brother before. No matter who made a mistake, it was always resolved through reflection. He wouldn't scold his disciples. He didn't rely on forceful methods or rules to teach his disciples. Instead, he relied on his disciples' self-awareness. As the eldest senior brother, Qingyan followed his master's way of doing things. Therefore, he wouldn't get angry at his junior brother. However, Xiangnan's matter had crossed his bottom line. Luo Shang's gaze moved between Xiangnan and Muyu. He wasn't angry like his senior brother. Instead, he was frowning. No one knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, Shimen Wuji still had an indifferent expression. To him, the life and death of cultivators had nothing to do with him. Do you really want to become enemies with all the cultivators in the world? Xiangnan, and you, Muyu. You want to undo the Nine Heavens sealing formation at all costs. Haven't you considered the consequences of Spirit, Lord Yumeng's death? Isn't Xiangnan's current state enough to remind you? Chengyan rebuked angrily. Xiangnan looked at Chengyan. He didn't immediately reply. Muyu also didn't want to explain. There were some things that he had to do. Even if he knew that it was dangerous, he would still try. Senior brother, is the matter of the immortal confining prison true? Did something really happen to Master? Muyu asked in a soft voice. Chengyan's eyes were red. He gritted his teeth and said in a trembling voice, Master is already in trouble. Therefore, I don't want anything to happen to you two as well. Muyu felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a knife. An indescribable pain engulfed his entire body, causing him to involuntarily tremble. First, it was Deadwood Daddy. Now it was his master. It was all because of that bastard from the threefold palace. He was filled with hatred. He hated that he didn't have the ability to protect his master, Deadwood Daddy, and the people he wanted to protect. His master had given them everything. He had sacrificed himself for the entire human race. However, in the end, he was still targeted by a treacherous villain. Shimen Wuji said, Not only did something happen to your master, even my master's whereabouts are unknown. Evil Shadow, an immortal with heaven-defying cultivation, had also disappeared. Xiangnan, you know that we will stop you at all costs. If you want to control the self-cultivators to fight against the threefold palace, it's like throwing an egg at a rock. You might even get yourself killed. Master doesn't want to see you captured by the threefold palace, Luo Shang said. How are you going to stop me? Xiangnan asked. The tens of thousands of self-cultivators who had been controlled by the demonic souls all began to shout loudly. It was as if they were laughing at him. These demonic souls were similar to Sikong Chiwen. They had fused their consciousness with the human consciousness. This allowed the demonic souls to possess the memories of self-cultivators. They also possessed greater combat strength than self-cultivators. Because they were demonic beasts, their combat instincts wouldn't disappear. Xiangnan's ability was equivalent to fusing demonic beasts and self-cultivators together. Luo Shang's body also began to burn. Rolling heat waves spread through the yellow sand. He was burning with anger. He had grown up with Xiangnan. Although he had chosen to leave the Luochen mountain, he was still very familiar with Xiangnan. However, the current Xiangnan was no longer the simple and honest third junior brother. "You're no match for me. After I fused with Hutu, my cultivation has far surpassed yours." Xiangnan shook his head slightly. Chapter 553. Yellow sand fluttered in the air, flames burned all around, and the air was filled with hostility that shouldn't have appeared. Shimin Wuji chose to stand aside and watch. This was someone else's family matter, so he silently retreated to the side. "Muyu, whose side are you on?" Luo Shang coldly asked. The burning heaven sword in his hand flickered with blazing radiance. He wanted to know Muyu's position. Muyu lowered his head. He was very disappointed in his heart. They were from the same sect, but they were going to meet each other with weapons? He didn't support Xiangnan's approach, but he also didn't want to interfere with Xiangnan's decision, just like how he didn't want others to interfere with him solving the ninth heaven's sealing devil formation. "I want to do my own thing." Muyu slowly spat out these few words. What he wanted to do the most was to resurrect Deadwood Daddy. Luo Shang firmly stared at Muyu and said, "I understand. Then today, I'll take care of you as well. Otherwise, sooner or later you'll all be in trouble." The flames that filled the sky instantly surrounded Muyu and illuminated Muyu's body, making him feel uncomfortable. Luo Shang was at the 9th layer of the spirit severing stage, and Muyu had just stepped into the spirit severing stage. Their sword techniques were all from the 9 guides of Heavenly Sword. Perhaps Muyu had comprehended the sword formation of the 9 guides of Heavenly Sword and had a deeper understanding of the 9 guides of Heavenly Sword, but it was still very difficult for him to defeat Luo Shang. The pitch-black tree branches revolved around Muyu, and the leaves of Mu Ling were verdant and exuberant with vitality. The intertwining black and green plants emitted a strange aura, blocking all the heat waves outside. Muyu lightly tapped the runes under his feet, and his entire body disappeared in the sea of flames, leaving Luo Shang's encirclement. Cheng Yin frowned. "Master doesn't want us to learn array formations. Why are you going against Master's wishes?" Cheng Yin looked at the rippling array patterns around Muyu's body, looking very annoyed. The reason why Feng Haochen didn't allow them to learn about arrays was because he was worried that Spirit Lord Yaman would discover the flaws in the arrays set up by the human race. If that happened, the arrays set up by the human race to deal with the Yaman would lose their effectiveness in the future. Muyu's actions went against Feng Haochen's original intentions. "I have to learn about formations," Muyu said softly. He had no other choice. He had to ensure that Deadwood Daddy's soul anchoring array would not have any problems. He also had to find a way to break the 9th heaven sealing demon formation. Most importantly, he didn't want to bury Deadwood Daddy's reputation as a formation grandmaster. Deadwood Daddy had lost to Feng Haochen in all aspects. The only area where he could compare to Feng Haochen was in array formations. Back then, Deadwood Daddy had used his life to cast array formations. It was to prove his ability to Muyu, to prove that he was qualified to be Muyu's master. Perhaps in order to satisfy that stubborn old man's wish, Muyu wanted to inherit his array formations. However, Cheng Yin and Luo Shang didn't understand. They didn't know what kind of person Deadwood Evergreen was. "I can't let the two of you continue to do whatever you want." Cheng Yin's expression was very serious. As the eldest senior brother, when something happened to his master, he had to shoulder the responsibility. He couldn't let anything happen to his junior brother, especially when the power hidden in the 4 of them was so terrifying. If they went out of control, the entire cultivation world would fall into a state of eternal damnation. The ground began to tremble. He peeled off all the metal from the yellow sand, turning them into pieces of metal ores of different sizes, which floated around in the surroundings. Each piece of metal shone with a cold light, and a murderous aura swept over everyone. Qingyan was also at the 9th level of the spirit severing stage. Muyu was still the one with the lowest cultivation among the four. However, the difference was that he had mastered the sword formation of the Heavenly Sword 9 guides and learned powerful array techniques. This was something Qingyan and the others didn't have. The four of them each controlled items of the 5 elements. They confronted each other because of different beliefs. The metal ores around Qingyan suddenly turned into a flowing substance and instantly came to Xiangnan's side. Countless metal ores covered Xiangnan. Countless rocks rose around Xiangnan, blocking all of Qingyan's metal ores. However, Qingyan's metal ores instantly turned into all kinds of extremely sharp blades, instantly shattering all the rocks. However, the ground around Xiangnan suddenly sank, as if a huge tearing force was coming from the ground. The speed of those sharp blades was also slowed down, and they were directly wrapped up by the yellow sand. The dull sound of metal and sand colliding fiercely intertwined. On the other side, Luo Shang's Sea of Fire had already covered Muyu. Luo Shang's offensive power was very strong. His Sea of Fire was on the verge of erupting, instantly igniting Muyu's trees. However, Muyu's trees would always sprout in the Sea of Fire, growing and multiplying endlessly. This was not the first time Muyu fought with Luo Shang. When they were in the Maoyun mountain range, Muyu had already fought with Luo Shang. Muyu was always at a disadvantage under the flames, but because of the endless growth, he would not be defeated immediately. Why are we fighting? Muyu was very disappointed. They were originally fellow disciples. Although they would occasionally bicker, they never thought that one day they would meet on the battlefield. When Muyu was in the second heaven, in the dream that Phantom created for him, he fought against Chengyan and the others alone, including Xiao Shui. However, Muyu had always thought that it was just a dream. He recalled what Phantom had said at that time. A dream might be a certain reality. However, the main characters in this reality had evolved into Xiangnan and himself. Every time you cause trouble, I can help you solve it. However, if you want to break the 9th heaven's ceiling formation, I have to stop you. I can't let you change like Xiangnan. Luo Shang's eyes flickered with flames, and even his hair was burning. His fighting spirit was high, and his aura was like the sun at noon. The 9th heaven's sealing formation had not successfully sealed Empress II in Xiangnan's body, which was also the reason why Xiangnan's personality had changed greatly. Both Qingyan and Luo Shang were worried that after Gomong was released from the 9th heaven's sealing formation, Muyu's thoughts would be assimilated by Spirit Lord Yumeng, and he would become extreme and become another Xiangnan. I want to resurrect Deadwood Daddy. That's all, Muyu said firmly. The plants around him had all turned into summer fir. These were plants that were not afraid of heat and would not be ignited by flames. They could block all the heat outside. Resurrecting Deadwood Evergreen is not a good thing. You will destroy everyone in the cultivation world for him alone. His life is not as important as everyone's life, Luo Shang replied coldly. Deadwood Daddy's life was not as important as everyone's life? Muyu suddenly became angry. He thought of what had happened to Deadwood Daddy and felt that it was unfair. He could not blame his master for anything because his master had never wanted to hurt Deadwood Daddy. However, fate was always unfair to Deadwood Daddy. For Miao Yin, Papa Kumu was willing to give up everything and become the Poison King, Kumu Evergreen, who was feared by all in the cultivation world. He was even willing to put down his pride to save his love rival, Feng Haochen. He had always lived for others, but when he wanted to live for himself, he no longer had the chance to do so. If such a person was not worth saving, then who was worth saving? Those hypocritical and laughable cultivators in the cultivation world? Those cultivators who were treated like dirt by the Third Palace? In the eyes of the Threefold Palace, these cultivators were nothing more than livestock. One day, when the power of the Threefold Palace ran out, these cultivators would be sent out to fight Yu Meng and die on the battlefield. Then, they would be turned into sole power to consolidate the Third Palace's supreme position. The anger in Muyu's chest seemed to burn even more fiercely than the flames on Luo Shang's body. Luo Shang's words had thoroughly enraged him. Deadwood Daddy was the one who had the most right to live. I only want to save those who I think are worth saving. Even if the whole world doesn't understand me, so what? Muyu's voice became extremely cold and his body trembled. For the sake of everyone's lives, his master had chosen to sacrifice his own cultivation. However, in the end, he had received the betrayal of the third palace and was left to silently wait for death in a barren land. Even the people from the gate of hell dared to target him. Now that Bai Jie had already made a move against his master, was Muyu also going to seal his own ability and not let Deadwood Daddy live? Why? What did his master gain by sacrificing his own cultivation? What did the people of the third palace do for his master? What did Muyu gain by sealing his own ability? What did all the other cultivators do to him? The cultivators thought that the world was flourishing under the leadership of the third palace, but they didn't know that someone was carrying the burden for them in the darkness and working hard to eliminate all the hidden dangers. Deadwood Daddy had once accused Feng Haochen of being the world's hero, but not daring to be the husband of the woman he loved. Muyu didn't want to be the world's hero. He only wanted to be Deadwood Daddy's son. What did the world's righteousness have to do with him? His heart weighed the world. If he couldn't even protect the people he cared about, how could he protect the entire cultivation world? He couldn't do it. Muyu respected his master, but he didn't want to walk the same path as his master. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Also, resurrecting Deadwood Daddy is something I will definitely do. No one can stop me. Muyu's eyes had completely changed. His left eye flickered with white light, and his right eye was filled with black light. Black and white spiritual energy rapidly swam around his body, and his aura was constantly rising. Muyu had never liked Luo Shang because Lan Ling would always use Luo Shang to belittle him. Luo Shang also didn't like Muyu because Muyu almost killed his master in the Moyen mountain range. Due to their relationship as martial brothers, Luo Shang had always helped Muyu, and Muyu also acknowledged him as his second martial brother. However, Muyu couldn't stand Luo Shang's words. Deadwood Daddy's life was extremely important to him. Compared to those cultivators who were kept in the dark, Deadwood Daddy was the one he cared about more. Master wants to save the lives of all the humans in the world, so I will follow Master's wishes. We can use any method to eradicate the third palace, but definitely not at the cost of undoing the ninth heaven's demon sealing array. Do you not care about Master at all? Luo Shang's tone was very firm. His master had always been his unshakable belief. Feng Haochen taught his disciples by example. He would never tell his disciples what to do and what not to do. He would only tell them, when you think that you're doing something that is worthy of your heart, then it is right. Luo Shang and Qingyan believed that the lives of cultivators were at the top of Mount Tai, so they stood on the side of the cultivators. Xiangnan believed that eradicating the third palace was the most important thing, so he didn't care about the lives of other cultivators. Muyu believed that reviving Deadwood Daddy was the right thing to do, so he wanted to undo the ninth heaven's demon sealing array. No one was wrong. Those who wanted to achieve great things didn't care about trifles. There were always people who needed to make sacrifices. It was difficult to be filial and righteous at the same time. Why was Muyu wrong for choosing filial piety? After a long silence, Muyu asked, if Master was killed by the third palace, and I could revive him, would you let me revive Master? Luo Shang's body trembled violently, and the flames in his eyes weakened. He had never considered this question before. If Lan Ling was killed by the third palace, would you let me revive her? Muyu asked again. Luo Shang clenched his fists. He suddenly felt a wave of panic. Master and Lan Ling were both very important people to him. Would he let Muyu do this? Muyu looked at Luo Shang coldly. Whether you are willing or not, if this happens, I will definitely save her, just like how I saved Deadwood Daddy. The flames on Luo Shang's body gradually dimmed. His chest heaved up and down. He didn't know how to refute Muyu's words. It turned out that everyone was selfish. When things didn't happen to them, they could preach to their heart's content, talk about benevolence, righteousness, and morality, and take the world as their responsibility. and when disaster befell them, they would be at a loss of what to do. After all, not everyone was as broad-minded as Jianing and Chenfeng. Chapter 554. Countless metal cylinders suddenly gushed out from under Mu Yu's feet, instantly forming a cage and trapping Mu Yu inside. Let me tell you something. If that really happens, I won't let you resurrect. Qingyan took a step forward and appeared in front of Mu Yu. He quietly looked at Mu Yu. Because Master won't let you do that. Just as you know in your heart, Senior Kumu won't let you do that either. When they painstakingly laid down the 9 heavens sealing formation, they didn't want you to be possessed by Spirit Lord Yu Ming. You'll cause an unnecessary disaster to the cultivation world. A powerful pressure enveloped Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu glanced at Xiang Nan and found that he was firmly pinned down in the air by 8 pieces of metal. The 8 pieces of metal were as slender as flying swords. They each formed a square, surrounded Xiang Nan. There seemed to be some kind of strange traction force between them, interacting with each other and preventing Xiang Nan from rushing out. The sand around Xiang Nan wanted to get close to his body, but it was always scattered by the waves emitted by the metal. It couldn't get close at all. Formation veins surged under Mu Yu's feet. He wanted to teleport out of the cage, but as soon as his formation veins flashed out, they were torn away by the metal cage. The spiritual energy around him couldn't even flow in. The branches around Mu Yu wanted to escape through the cracks in the cage, but a powerful repulsive force came from the metal cage, preventing the branches from extending. Mu Yu had never seen Qingyan's ability to control metal before, so he didn't know how powerful Qingyan's ability was. Only now did he truly see it for himself. In the past, Qingyan had attached a small piece of metal to their flying swords. By relying on the force field emitted by the metal, he could find Mu Yu and the others. The metal could emit a powerful magnetic field. Under Qingyan's control, this magnetic field could repel or attract anything, including the spiritual energy emitted by cultivators and the spiritual energy around them. Master said that when you do something, you should do it if you feel that you're worthy of your heart. You keep saying that what you have done is worthy of your heart. But is that really the case? Ask yourselves, will you have a clear conscience after doing this? Are you worthy of Master? How could he face Elder Deadwood? How can we face our other brothers and sisters? Qingyan's voice was filled with an indescribable majesty. Mu Yu knew that Changyan was right. If Deadwood Daddy knew about this, he would never have let Mu Yu take the risk to open the 9th heaven sealing demon formation to revive him. His master would not have allowed Mu Yu to do so either. He just stubbornly believed that what he did was right. But why was it that in this world, good people always had to make sacrifices while bad people ran rampant? There was always someone who needed to uphold justice and let those who deserve to live live. Mu Yu had the ability to decide between life and death in the blink of an eye. So why couldn't this person be him? Even if I'm wrong, I will continue to be wrong. I can't be a saint. I just want to be a good son of Deadwood Daddy. Mu Yu shouted wildly, and the intertwining black and white spiritual power began to surge out of his body. The black spiritual power was mixed with a haze of death energy, and the white spiritual power was endlessly growing. These two kinds of spiritual power were the purest forces in the world, and they maintained a wonderful balance in Mu Yu's body. The metal magnetic field created by Qingyan could not break this balance, so it could not repel them. The black and white spiritual power instantly covered the metal bars with branches and gushed out. Mu Yu had already disappeared into the branches, breaking free. A Bodhi tree vigorously sprouted under Mu Yu's feet, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a towering tree that was incompatible with the surrounding yellow sand. Mu Yu stood at the top of the Bodhi tree, and the green leaves fluttered around him, free and easy. On the other side, Xiang Nan's yellow sand swept out wildly, forming a ring of sand around them. The violent power of earth finally broke through the bindings of the 8 pieces of metal. Yellow sand fluttered around him, and he looked like a king in the desert, coldly looking at his fellow disciples. Luo Shang's body was reignited, and his eyes were burning like a volcano that was about to erupt. The flames wreaked havoc around him, and countless sparks burst out. The sparks that burst out were not only red, but also pale white. The temperature was so high that people could not help but retreat. Our targets are the people from the third palace. Why can't we negotiate peacefully? Luo Shang said in a low voice. He tried hard to get rid of the strange thoughts in his mind. Xiang Nin shook his head. Because you have too many misgivings and too many useless people. Once you have misgivings, you will be restrained. So, I want to use my own method to deal with the third palace. Xiang Nan's aura was very strong, and it overshadowed everyone. His cultivation had reached a very terrifying level. Cheng Yin and Luo Shang's expressions changed when the overwhelming aura burst out. Your method is wrong. Cheng Yin rebuked angrily. Countless pieces of metal surged around him, and he once again headed south. The yellow sand and the pieces of metal collided, and a powerful force erupted, tearing apart everything around them. However, a terrifying wave of spiritual power surged from Xiang Nan's body, and it instantly repelled Cheng Yin. It also enveloped all the pieces of metal in yellow sand. The Bodhi tree under Mu Yu's feet swayed gently in the yellow sand, and its green leaves rippled with mysterious formation patterns in the air. He gently raised his hand, and the shadow clone sword appeared in his hand from the formation patterns in the air. A steady sword chi jumped in his palm, and he pointed it straight at Luo Shang. If you want to fight, we'll fight. I'll do my own thing, and no one can stop me. Mu Yu's expression was resolute. The Bodhi tree leaves danced in the air, surrounding the shadow clone sword, and the sword trembled slightly. The green sword flattened the void, and the sword shadow appeared in his hand. Luo Shang was silent, but he also pulled out his own burning heaven sword. The red burning heaven sword streaked across the sky, and the air seemed to be faintly burning. The sword star swept across the wasteland, and the sword's anger could also burn the sky. The erosion-cleansing sword in Cheng Yin's hand flickered with a golden light, steady and reserved, just like his personality. The sharpness was hidden in his heart, and the sword's momentum was graceful. Xiang Nan's stargazing sword was heavy, and it seemed so sturdy in the yellow sand, like a huge rock. If the sword light was not sharpened, the sword intent would be born from the heart. Shadow clone and burning heaven, erosion cleansing and stargazing. Sword Shadow and Chun Feng had gathered 4 of the 7 heavenly swords in the desert. The wind howled, and the heavenly swords cried. For their different beliefs, they let the heavenly swords walk on opposite sides. When the swords moved, the people moved. Feng Haochen once asked Mu Yu, "Why do we need to use swords?" Mu Yu did not know how to answer. He thought that the sword was just a tool to make himself stronger. But now he understood that the sword was to protect one's beliefs. Mu Yu looked at Luo Shang. He had always been chasing after Luo Shang's footsteps, but he was always a distance away. Because of Lanling, he did not like Luo Shang, but he could not deny that Luo Shang was a reliable senior brother. He also yearned to surpass Luo Shang one day. He wanted to defeat Luo Shang for his beliefs. The shadow clone sword streaked across the sky, and the figure floated over. Only the powerful formation patterns were left in the void. Burning heaven and shadow clone, the sword tips touched, and a terrifying fluctuation spread out with the two as the center. The blazing flames and the green leaf fiercely collided in the air. The green leaf transformed into a strange black and white energy, and actually resisted the burning of the blazing flames. The sword stabbed out, and the wind and clouds changed color. The sword light overflowed, and the sword intent was awe-inspiring. Luo Shang was still so strong. Even if he did not learn the Sky Sword 9 guiding formation, his sword force still reached a terrifying level. Mu Yu's figure flashed in the air, and Luo Shang's dustfall steps followed closely behind. The two sky swords intertwined in the air, and in a breath's time, they had already exchanged thousands of blows. Sword shadows constantly fell in the air, and sword sparks flew everywhere. They were using the most primitive sword techniques to compete, and no one was at a disadvantage. Chengyan and Xiangnan's sword force was extremely terrifying. In the past, Xiangnan was very lazy, but his sword techniques and cultivation had never fallen behind. His laziness was just a disguise for the pain in his heart. He had always wanted to take revenge for his family. His sword was as heavy as Mount Tai, and every move was heavy. It was simple, but it was unstoppable. Chengyan's sword was as light as a rainbow. Facing Xiangnan's heavy sword force, he was neither anxious nor impatient. He always countered Xiangnan's sword moves at the perfect time, for figures flickered in the air and sword beams shot out from them. At a certain moment, the four of them suddenly stopped at the same time. However, the sword beams in their hands became more and more intense. They were like a violent storm, invading the entire desert. Muyu held the shadow clone sword in front of his chest. The shadow clone sword hummed softly, as if it had transformed into thousands of illusions, but also seemed to have merged into one. There seemed to be 9 Muyu in front of him, and they were all manifesting the 9 heavenly sword guides. However, at a certain moment, there was only one left. That person, that sword. It was simple, but it was so powerful. Luo Shan's burning heaven was also dancing. The flames around him formed all kinds of sword forces, and then they merged together. His sword surged boldly, ostentatiously, and arrogantly, like a blazing sun. Chengyan's sword was so steady. His 9 sword forces were airtight, and at that moment, they merged into a single point. Xiangnan's sword was thick and steady, and his figure was slow and solid. It seemed to be full of flaws, but it was impeccable. At that moment, 4 swords stabbed out at the same time. The highest profundity of the 9 heavenly sword guides, 9 returned to 1. It was a simple sword, but it transformed into thousands of worlds. They were all disciples of Sword Shadow and Chun Feng. They made different choices for their master, so they wanted to let the sword forces taught by their master determine right and wrong. One sword to determine victory. The air had already become extremely hot. Different sword forces condensed into a single point in the yellow sand. Every sword represented their own beliefs and decisions. Ding! The 4 swords clashed, but only a soft sound was produced. It was like the most primitive sound in the world. The sword beams had already riddled the surrounding sand with holes. The sword force of the 9 heavenly sword guides exploded. You shouldn't have done this. A tiny white figure streaked across the sky. At the same time, the 4 heavenly swords broke free from each other's control. None of them harmed the other as they hummed in the air. The 4 heavenly swords had their own consciousness. They were unwilling to attack their partners. This time, their sword hilts were pressed against each other. The tips of the swords were pointed outwards, forming a cross. Little Commander's figure stood in the center of the 4 sword hilts. Little Commander was controlling 4 swords alone. Little Commander's expression was very solemn. He did not know why he had to come out. He only knew that he had to. The white-bearded old man once said that the hardest part of a fist is facing outwards. A sword's sharpest tip should not be pointed at a brother. Little Commander's childish voice sounded very sonorous and powerful at that moment. The sword hilts were pressed against each other, and the sword tips were pointed outwards. The sword was like a person. The sword hilt was the person's back, and the sword tip was the person's fist. The back was reserved for a trusted brother, and the fist was reserved for a common enemy. It was just like the cross formed by the 4 swords. The sharpest tip should not be pointed at a brother. Chapter 555. No one knew where Xiao Shuai came from, but everyone knew that he had a close relationship with their master. Muyu even knew that Xiao Shuai had an unusual relationship with the Sky Sword. Today, Xiao Shuai had taken control of 4 Sky Swords, freeing them from the control of Muyu and the others. He had passed on Feng Haochen's teachings to his 4 disagreeing senior and junior brothers. No one said anything. They had picked up their own swords for different beliefs and pointed their swords at their own senior and junior brothers. That was an extremely stupid thing to do. The Sky Sword had gotten its name from fighting against Yumeng, but now it had become evidence of fratricide in their hands. The 4 Sky Swords had spirituality. They were unwilling to use the highest sword force of the Sky Sword 9 guides against their own people, so they chose to let go of the sword force and let Xiao Shuai take control of them. Muyu raised his head and looked at his senior brother. Their beliefs had differed, but this was not a reason for them to fight. "I won't hurt you," Xiangnan said softly. His cultivation level had long surpassed Qingyin's and everyone else's. However, he had not used his full strength when fighting against Qingyin. His greatest reliance had been his earth control technique, but he had chosen the stargazing sword. He knew that his sword Shadow was Chun Feng's disciple and the successor of the Sky Sword 9 guides. Using the stargazing sword was the best choice when fighting against his senior brother. Cheng Yin and Luo Shang remained silent. They were extremely sad that their master had fallen into the hands of the Threefold Palace. Xiangnan and Mu Yu had chosen their own way to fight against the Threefold Palace, but they had no choice but to stop them. Xiangnan and Mu Yu's choice would put the cultivation world, which their master had protected his entire life, in danger. Master cares about the world. He sacrificed himself for the sake of humanity, but what did he get in return? Is this the cultivation world you really want to protect? Xiangnan continued. Mu Yu could not refute him. Neither could Cheng Yin and Luo Shang. They hated everything the Threefold Palace had done, but the Threefold Palace was a colossus. They were still struggling in the game set by the Threefold Palace, unable to jump out. If they wanted to truly fight against the Threefold Palace, they could not play according to the rules set by the Threefold Palace. Xiangnan chose to change the rules of the game, using extreme methods to customize his own rules. Muyu did not want to participate in this game. He just wanted to save Deadwood Daddy. Qingyin and Luo Shang wanted to continue playing the game. They wanted to protect all the cultivators in the game for their master. After a long time, Qingyin slowly said, "I will not change my original intention. I will follow Master's wishes." Luo Shang glanced at Qingyin, his mouth moving twice, but he didn't say anything. "I want to save Deadwood Daddy." Mu Yu's belief was still firm. Mu Yu didn't want to be the protector of a human race. He just wanted to be Deadwood Daddy's son and help Deadwood Daddy fill his regrets. Going south would not change either. The 4 heavenly swords separated in the air as if they had been torn apart. They left a desolate sword mark in the sky and landed in the hands of their respective masters. Little Shuai also jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder. He couldn't interfere with other people's wishes. Chengyan looked at Mu Yu and Xiangnan and sighed heavily. His master had already fallen into the hands of the Third Palace. He didn't want his junior brother to be trapped again, but at the same time, he also understood that there was no going back once things happened. "Senior brother, I know you want to stop me, but if you want to stop me, you alone won't be enough. You're not a complete person. You have to accept Rushu's existence," Xiangnan said slowly. A tyrannical aura surged out of Xiangnan's body like a resplendent moon. It pressed down on everyone, making them feel an unprecedented pressure. Xiangnan was the only person who didn't have a 9 Heavens demon sealing array in his body. He had chosen to fuse with Hutu. His cultivation level had already surpassed that of his junior brother. "I don't want to fight with you. You're no match for me. If you want to stop me, let's see if you have the ability to stop these people first." Xiangnan waved his hand heavily. All the cultivators roared fervently again. Then, the entire building made of yellow sand collapsed with a loud crash. The boundless desert once again appeared in front of everyone. A dense crowd floated in the air, watching these 4 fellow apprentices. "These 100,000 people will carry my orders and return to their lives. They will hide among the cultivators and wait for the right time to destroy the Third Palace with me. I don't think you can stop these 100,000 people from leaving." As soon as Xiangnan finished speaking, countless whistling sounds came from the sky. The 100,000 people all flashed and scattered in all directions in an orderly manner. Many people headed towards Clearwater City because that was their resting place. However, there were also many people who directly flew out of the desert like scattered birds and beasts. In less than a quarter of an hour, More than 100,000 cultivators who had been possessed by demon souls had all disappeared at the end of the desert. Among these 100,000 people, there were more than a dozen extremely talented extreme immortals. There were also countless disciples of the 8 sects and many cultivators who were very talented but not very powerful. Each of them would become the next Sikong Chiwen. However, Xiangnan wouldn't let them be so ostentatious anymore. These cultivators would hide in the cultivation world and slowly occupy the extreme immortal leaderboard. They would take control of the extreme immortal leaderboard and destroy the Third Palace's scheme. There would be many dark horses like Sikong Chiwen in the 8 gates. Every sect would be overjoyed because the number of extreme immortals represented the strength of a sect. The more extreme immortals a sect had, the more the extreme immortals would be valued by the Third Palace. If a sect could become one of the top 9 extreme immortals, the status of the entire sect in the cultivation world would rise. Xiangnan would let many people in the cultivation world see the hope of the sect's rise. But how could this opportunity be so simple? Only the cultivators who hadn't been possessed were left in the air. They were still covered in yellow sand and looked like sand sculptures. The cultivators in these sand sculptures were very weak. The demonic soul would only choose cultivators with a high level of cultivation. It wouldn't choose the weak. Sikong Chiwen was chosen during the Jindan period because he wanted Sikong Chiwen during the Jindan period to reach the spirit-severing stage in a short period of time. It was a gimmick. This sudden rise in power would attract more people to Clearwater City. They would investigate Sikong Chiwen's situation and complete Xiangnan's plan. Now that the plan had come to fruition, there was no need to choose weak cultivators. The Sand Eagle Demon King and the altar had fallen into a deep sleep under Xiangnan's control before Mu Yu killed Tian Busho. He didn't know what had just happened. There was still a long time before the seal on the Sand Eagle Demon King was lifted. Mu Yu might have a way to help the Sand Eagle Demon King break free from the seal. However, the Sand Eagle Demon King had already lost his heart. He wouldn't be able to wake up even if he broke free from the seal. Qingyan and Luo Shang both had a lot on their minds. With so many people dispersing in different directions, they couldn't stop them at all. They could only watch as they left. These people would be like Sikong Chiwen. They would quietly return to the cultivation world and take on the role of each cultivator. They would gather information for Xiangnan. In the future, when Yuman and the human race go to war, these people would definitely become a variable. That was about 100,000 people. We all have things we want to do, don't we? Xiangnan glanced at Mu Yu. The yellow sand that filled the sky danced around him rapidly. He had achieved his goal. It was time to leave. The sarcophagus slowly emerged from the yellow sand. The Sand Eagle Demon King's heart was sealed in it. Xiangnan was standing on the sarcophagus at this moment. You didn't control my family, did you? Mu Yu asked quietly. Don't worry. I will never do anything to you, including your loved ones, your friends, and the array masters under your control. They are all fine. Your dormant brother, Mu Qing Fan, has also recovered. I will let everyone in Clearwater City take care of your family. You can do whatever you want in the future. Don't worry about what will happen to your family. Then, Xiangnan said word by word, I don't want you to lose your family like I did. Tears seemed to glisten in Xiangnan's eyes for a moment. There was also an unconcealable sadness. However, the yellow sand covered everything. No one could see his tears clearly. Xiangnan had experienced the pain of losing his family, so he understood what it meant. Although he was no longer Xiangnan, Mu Yu was still his junior brother. He wanted to persuade Mu Yu to be with him, but he would never use his family to force Mu Yu to do so. The yellow sand increased and gradually enveloped Xiangnan's body. Then, all the yellow sand suddenly lost control. With a crash, Xiangnan's figure disappeared. As for the altar that sealed Desert Eagle, it gradually sank back into the yellow sand. Everything returned to normal. Qingyan clenched his fists. This was the desert. It was impossible to catch up to Xiangnan. To Mu Yu, it was no longer important who the victor of this competition was. To him, there were more important things to do. Thank you, Mu Yu said softly as he watched Xiangnan disappear into the yellow sand. Muyu kept the trees around her and glanced at Cheng Yin and Luo Shang. Then, with a light tap of her feet, she flew towards Clearwater City. Luo Shang didn't stop him. They knew that Muyu wouldn't leave Clearwater City so quickly. His family was still in Clearwater City. Luo Shang looked at Muyu's back view. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. What is the right thing to do? Luo Shang felt lost. Muyu's words were still echoing in his ears. What should he do if something happened to Lan Ling er? He looked at Cheng Yin. For the first time, his beliefs were shaken. In Luo Shang's heart, his masters and Lan Ling er's lives were more important than all the other cultivators. He helped Cheng Yin because Cheng Yin was his senior brother. He thought he was doing the right thing. But today, he realized that right and wrong didn't matter at all. If he couldn't even protect the people he cared about, how could he protect all the other cultivators in the world? Luo Shang didn't understand. He really didn't. He was supposed to be the most unruly person. The fierce wind in the desert swept every sand sculpture away. The sun roasted the yellow sand, and steam rose from it. Cheng Yin sighed. The metal around him turned into countless blades as thin as cicada's wings. These blades cut through the air and flew toward the sand eagles. Every blade turned into a cold glint and interweaved around the sand eagles. Countless yellow sand was easily peeled off by the blades. Shimen Wuji didn't make a move from the beginning to the end. He silently watched everything. Finally, he left with Cheng Yin and Luo Shang. The cultivators wrapped in yellow sand soon revealed their original faces. Everyone slowly opened their eyes and looked around in bewilderment. Xiang didn't take away their consciousness. Instead, he let them live. What happened just now? I don't know. I remember that there were countless sand eagles in the desert. Then we were swallowed by the yellow sand. Right? Who was the final winner of this competition? Sikong Chiwen's change just now was too strange. Where is he? Muyu and Tianba Luo are also gone. Many people were whispering to each other. At the same time, they found that their clothes were full of sand and quickly began to clean it. These cultivators would never think that they were lucky enough to escape death. They still believed in the Sanchong Palace that kept them like livestock. They worshipped the master of the Sanchong Palace like a god. They thought that as long as the Sanchong Palace existed, the Sanchong continent would shine. They thought that the cultivation world was still peaceful. Chapter 556. The Threefold Palace. It was like a paradise on earth. There were jade buildings and spiritual energy flowing around. This was the most mysterious place on the Threefold Continent. Other than the people from the Threefold Palace, no one knew where this place was. The magnificent palace was faintly discernible. From time to time, there would be figures covered in holy white light streaking across the sky. In a majestic palace, there was an altar. On top of the altar, there were two towering stone tablets. One was black and the other was white. The white stone tablet was dotted with many green dots. From time to time, the green dots would disappear and the white dots would reappear. On the other hand, the black tablet was covered with countless white dots. The number of white dots was decreasing. Bai Jie stood in front of the stone tablet and looked at it. No one knew what he was thinking. Palm Soul, what's the situation in Clearwater City? Bai Jie asked calmly. In front of Bai Jie stood a person covered in white light. However, the light on his body was much smaller than Bai Jie's. He was the law enforcer of the Threefold Palace. He was usually in charge of monitoring the changes in soul power on the Threefold Continent. Palm Soul said respectfully, Jianing and Chun Feng's 4 disciples are in the desert. We don't dare to go there because Xiangnan has merged with Hutu. The desert is his battlefield. He has temporarily sealed the entire desert to keep us outside. Yaman and the human race have been fighting for so many years. The 5 Spirit, Lord Yuming, knew how to deal with the people from the Threefold Palace. Is Xiang Nin the only one who has merged with Spirit Lord Yuming? That's not what I want to see. Bai Jie shook his head slightly. There's one more thing. Muyu's family is in Clearwater City. Do you think we should use his family to force him to show himself? Palm Soul asked. Bai Jie touched the stone tablet and said, he can't show himself. Deadwood Evergreen's blood protection, shrouding the sky, is protecting him. This array is too powerful. Even I can't break it. Even if someone brings him to us, we won't be able to see him. We won't be able to get anything. Then what should we do? Should we borrow the power of Stargate to deal with Muyu? Should we let the people from Stargate force the complete soul array out of Muyu? Palm's soul suggested. Stargate? Stargate can't handle the heavy responsibility. I think heaven awaits me has already died in Muyu's hands. He could not let any cultivator know about the soul array, not even the Stargate. We are not in a hurry to deal with Muyu. Right now, he needs to revive Deadwood Evergreen. Once he revives Deadwood Evergreen, his life will return to Deadwood Evergreen. Then, the blood protection heaven shrouding formation that Deadwood Evergreen uses life to create will disappear. That will be the time for us to strike, by Jia said. Palm Soul asked hesitantly, but Deadwood Evergreen is a very difficult person to deal with. Do you really want to revive him? If we can kill Deadwood Evergreen once, we can kill him a second time. Moreover, Sword Shadow Chinfeng and Evil Shadow Immortal are both here as guests. Bai Jie smiled. His gaze was like a bolt of lightning that flashed across the sky. Faint ripples appeared in the air. Then, the ripples slowly transformed into a huge barrier. The barrier flowed with a white brilliance. There was also a red light within the barrier. The red light and the white light were fighting against each other. From time to time, there would be violent collisions. The red light was surrounded by the white light and was unable to break free. There were two figures sitting cross-legged inside the barrier. They were Feng Haochen and Evil Shadow Immortal. Bai Jie, you know that the first thing I will do after I break free is to kill you, right? Evil Shadow Immortal lazily leaned against the corner of the barrier. His eyes flashed with an evil light. Bai Jie said indifferently, Evil Shadow Immortal, you still won't give up. I don't believe you. Mother Vaster's Cur, if you didn't trick me, I would have already pressed you to the ground. Evil Shadow Immortal cursed. You know that my target is not you, but Sword Shadow Chun Feng. Bai Jie looked at Feng Haochen, who was resting with his eyes closed. Feng Haochen always had a calm expression. Even when he was in a difficult situation, his expression didn't change. When Bai Jie was talking, he didn't even open his eyes. What? You don't like my undying body? Evil Shadow Immortal raised his eyebrows. Your undying body's evil aura is too strong. Only Sword Shadow Chinfeng can catch my eye. After all, Sword Shadow Chinfeng is a true god of the third layer of the continent. His image is deeply engraved in the hearts of the self-cultivators. Using his body can make self-cultivators more determined to fight Yumon, Bai Jie said with a faint smile. Evil Shadow Immortal coldly snorted. With me here, don't even think about touching a single hair of my great saint. How long can you resist in my barrier? I have plenty of time to waste with you. As for how long you can last, I'm very doubtful. Bai Jie waved his hand. Ripples flashed, and the barrier disappeared. Inside the barrier, Evil Shadow Immortal cursed a bunch of ugly words. He was practically cursing Bai Jie's 108th generation ancestor. After scolding for a long time, he felt a little tired and stopped. He looked at Feng Haochen and said with dissatisfaction, My great sage, we've been captured and you're still so relaxed. Say something. Feng Haochen opened his eyes and faintly smiled. Didn't you hear what Bai Jie said? His target is only me. Fuck, I've really had 8 lifetimes of bad luck. I actually wanted to save you. I'm so angry. If it wasn't for that bastard Bai Jie's trick, I wouldn't have fallen to this state. You, on the other hand, are always so calm and unhurried. Just looking at you annoys me. Evil Shadow Immortal gritted his teeth. Bai Jie had set up a trap. Even Evil Shadow Immortal, who had an exceedingly high cultivation, had fallen for it. Bai Jie had taken control of the Immortal Confining Prison, causing the entire Immortal Confining Prison to be in Bai Jie's hands. This was also the reason why Feng Haochen was unable to fight against Bai Jie. However, Evil Shadow Immortal was someone who had lived for thousands of years. Even though he had fallen for the trap, he still relied on his strange, evil power to resist Bai Jie's soul power. However, being trapped in Bai Jie's territory, it was very difficult for Evil Shadow Immortal to gain any advantage. You could have chosen to escape by yourself. When your evil power is used up, it will be too late. Feng Haochen said helplessly. Shut up. I won't let you die. Back then, I said that I would definitely drag you into my hell on earth and let those women of mine accompany you for once. Being able to make the great sage fall for me has always been my life's goal. Before I do that, you can't die. Evil Shadow Immortal chuckled. A strange, evil aura rose from his body to resist the soul power's invasion. However, his aura weakened again. Even he didn't know how much longer he could last. Feng Haochen remained silent. How could he not know that this was just an excuse for Evil Shadow Immortal? Feng Haochen was several hundred years older than Evil Shadow Immortal. When Evil Shadow Immortal was very young, he had saved Evil Shadow Immortal's life and guided him onto the path of cultivation. Although Feng Haochen didn't want to see Evil Shadow Immortal's path in the end, killing him depended on his mood. However, Feng Haochen didn't eliminate Evil Shadow Immortal because of this. This was because he had always believed that the evil path was also a true path. Evil Shadow Immortal never did things based on principles. However, he remembered this favor for thousands of years. Some favors couldn't be repaid in a lifetime. There was an endless expanse of yellow sand. The sun was still scorching the desert, as if it was going to burn the entire land. Clearwater City was originally an unremarkable small city. However, because of Sikong Chiwen's sudden rise, it became famous. However, because of Sikong Chiwen, the entire cultivation world was no longer peaceful. The battle that had caused an uproar had finally come to an end, but who would have thought that the real battle had only just begun? Muyu walked slowly in the desert. He was in a terrible mood. Because of the differences between his fellow disciples and because of his master's accident, he couldn't calm down. He looked at Clearwater City in the distance, which was like a sleeping dragon. His heart was filled with melancholy. That was his home. However, he knew that he couldn't stay at home forever. The scorching sun was scorching, and the hot wind was blowing. At this moment, two figures appeared on the sand dune in front of Muyu. They seemed to have been waiting for Muyu. It seems that we all underestimated this extreme immortal competition, didn't we? Bai Yetian said from the sand dune in front of him. Beside him stood the woman in blue. She was like a blue lotus flower in the vast yellow sand. She was unique, elegant, and lovely. Muyu raised his head and glanced at Bai Yetian. However, he didn't stop. Instead, he continued walking toward Clearwater City. He had no interest in getting involved with the so-called Shadowless Clan. Even though he knew that the Shadowless Clan and the Silhouette Being organization were sworn enemies, so what? He had already killed Shadow Killer Qingming. He didn't need the Shadowless Clan's help. We thought that you would be killed by Shadow Killer Qingming. However, it seems that your ability is beyond our imagination. The disciples of Shadow Sword and Dust Wind are indeed amazing, especially your senior brother Xiangnan. I didn't expect him to control self-cultivators, Bai Yetian continued. Muyu stopped and frowned. How do you know about this? All the self-cultivators in the entire desert were turned into sand sculptures by Xiangnan. However, Bai Yetian, who was only at the divinity separating stage, escaped this disaster and even knew about Xiangnan. Was the Shadowless Clan really that powerful? I know that you want to fight against the people of the Sanchong Palace. I think we should be on the same side, Bai Yetian said with a smile. Muyu turned around and stared at Bai Yetian. The Sanchong Palace controls all the self-cultivators in the world of self-cultivators. Isn't the Shadowless Clan going against the Silhouette Being organization? How can you say that you're going against the Sanchong Palace? Bai Yetian showed a mysterious expression. The Silhouette Being organization is in the killing business. Countless self-cultivators have died in their hands. Who do you think is the biggest beneficiary behind this? Muyu was slightly stunned. After a long silence, Muyu said, is the Silhouette Being organization a chess piece controlled by the Sanchong Palace? After the self-cultivators died, they could be turned into soul power and collected by the Sanchong Palace through special means. Obviously, the Sanchong Palace was happy to see what the Silhouette Being organization was doing. Yes, the Sanchong Palace is behind the Silhouette Being organization. We are going against the Silhouette Being organization to fight against the Sanchong Palace. Our purpose is the same as yours, the woman in blue beside Bai Yetian replied. After a while, the woman in blue realized that she was a little rude because she didn't really know Mu Yu. So she continued, "My name is Bai Yetian. Why are you going against the Sanchong Palace?" Mu Yu asked. We all know the true face of the Sanchong Palace, don't we? We, the Shadowless clan, don't want to be a tool of the Sanchong Palace, so we want to fight back. We're here because we hope that you can cooperate with the Shadowless clan. Bai Yetian briefly explained his purpose. Mu Yu stared at Bai Yetian's eyes, and Bai Yetian also looked at Mu Yu calmly without flinching. Why are you looking for me? Because you are the disciple of Jian Ing Chun Feng. This answer didn't satisfy Mu Yu. I don't like to cooperate with others. Mu Yu shook his head and turned to leave. Bai Yetian didn't stop him. Instead, he said, "It's hard to be alone. We'll be waiting for you. We know more about the Threefold Palace than you can imagine. You know nothing about it, so I hope you can consider it in the future." Mu Yu didn't respond to him. Instead, he continued to walk toward Clearwater City. He didn't want to cooperate with a Shadowless clan with an unknown background. The Sanchong Palace was like a mountain, so how could the Shadowless clan go against the Sanchong Palace? What Mu Yu wanted to do the most now was to increase his cultivation and find a way to open the Nine Heavens Sealing Demon Formation so that he could use Blink of Life and Death to revive Deadwood Daddy. Deadwood Daddy at least knew Bai Jie, so he might know how to deal with Bai Jie. Chapter 557. At this moment, Clearwater City was bustling with activity again. There were all kinds of people on the streets. Many of them were whispering to each other, discussing the great battle between the Supreme Immortals. Standing in the middle of the street, Mu Yu was at a loss as he looked at these self-cultivators. More and more self-cultivators entered the desert and mingled with the self-cultivators in Clearwater City. The out-of-body stage old Taoist, the elegant nascent soul stage young man, and the graceful and beautiful woman. Were they all self-cultivators with demonic souls dominating their consciousness? Mu Yu didn't know. He couldn't tell. It was just like Sikong Chiwen back then. They had concealed everything perfectly, not revealing any flaws. The cultivation world had started to change. Mu Yu returned to the Mu residence and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that everyone was safe. Master Lu recounted what had happened. They had rushed back to Clearwater City and encountered sand tornadoes on the way. However, the sand tornadoes had let them go and attacked other self-cultivators instead. Xiangnan had never intended to hurt Mu Yu's family. Seeing that Mu Yu had returned safely, the people of the Mu clan finally felt relieved. Mu Qingfan's recovery also made the Mu family very excited. Mu Tianhe was very happy that his two closest grandsons were fine. However, he soon realized that something was wrong with Mu Yu. He was not as happy as the others. Instead, he seemed to have a lot on his mind. Mu Yu, Qingfan's recovery must have something to do with you, right? Mu Tianhe walked over and patted Mu Yu's shoulder. I was the one who asked senior brother for help. Mu Yu sighed. Xiangnan had controlled Sikong Chiwen, who was only in the Jindan period, to rise up and become a dark horse on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. This would attract more people to Clearwater City and realize his plan. However, Sikong Chiwen had done it on his own accord. It had nothing to do with Xiangnan. Your senior brother? Mu Yu was astonished. Like everyone else in the cultivation world, he had never heard that the true God had taken in other disciples besides Mu Yu. Grandpa, I want to be alone. Mu Yu walked into the small courtyard alone and sat under the tree in the courtyard in a daze. This time, Lil Shuai and Long Tongue were lying on the side quietly. The two of them had become the focus of this battle and were talked about enthusiastically by all the self-cultivators. After all, a dragon and a small beast were able to stall Sikong Chiwen, who was in the spirit-severing stage. Mu Yu thought of his own master. Now that his master had fallen into Bai Jie's hands, he would have to face the cruelest situation in the future, which was to point his sword at his master. He didn't know what he could do because he was too weak. He was only at the spirit-severing stage. He couldn't do anything in front of the three palaces. Maybe Xiang Nan is right, Muyu thought to himself. After Xiang Nan merged with Hutu, his strength increased greatly. Among the four martial brothers, only Xiang Nan had the ability to go against the three palaces. This time, Xiang Nan controlled about 100,000 self-cultivators. These self-cultivators came from all over the three continents. These self-cultivators would become a stumbling block for the three palaces in the future and ruin their plans. Muyu didn't support Xiang Nan's actions, but Cheng Yin and Luo Shang didn't support Muyu's actions either. There was a gap between the martial brothers that couldn't be resolved. Now, there were countless people in Clearwater City under Xiang Nan's control. These people would secretly protect the Mu family. The entire Clearwater City belonged to the Mu family in some sense. It was impossible for anyone to have any ideas about the Mu family. Muyu had already resolved the Mu family's worries, but there were still many things he wanted to do. The sudden rise of Sikong Chuan had a secret that was very attractive to the self-cultivators. Everyone wanted to dig out his secret. The disciples of the Eight Sects even joined forces to help Tian Busui fight against Sikong Chuan. They wanted to know the secret behind Sikong Chuan's sudden rise. Now they had found it. These disciples of the Eight Sects had become another Sikong Chuan. The demon soul in Sikong Chuan's body had already possessed someone else's body. He was now a self-cultivator from the Jinan period. Xiang Nan made everyone under his control announce that Muyu was the final winner of this competition. This news spread quickly. Soon, the entire Clearwater City knew about it. Everyone was amazed by Muyu's talent. He actually defeated Sikong Chuan and Tian Busui in one fell swoop. The most shocking news was that Sikong Chuan had actually killed Tian Busui. Now, Sikong Chuan had been severely injured by Muyu and was unconscious. Tian Jiansheng was furious. The news of Sikong Chuan killing Tian Busui came from him, and he had seen it with his own eyes. This was the most convincing. Tian Busui's corpse had been destroyed by Muyu. However, according to Tian Jiansheng, it was Sikong Chuan who had killed Tian Busui. Muyu's name once again set off a frenzy in the self-cultivator world. Clearwater City was in an uproar. No one could explain what had happened in the desert. Many self-cultivators seemed to have lost consciousness in the past few hours. However, no one was in trouble. The only missing self-cultivator was Tian Busui from Stargate. Of the three people, one was missing and one's cultivation level had plummeted. Only Muyu was unharmed. Needless to say, Muyu was the final winner. In Dubi Ying's gambling house, no one was optimistic about Muyu's chances. Only a few people had bet on Muyu. Therefore, the odds for Muyu were extremely high. This time, those who had bet on Muyu made a fortune. The happiest people were Kai Lai and Master Lu. They had won 50 million spiritual stones in one go. Mu Tianhe even said enviously that it would have been great if he had bet all his family's assets. He had bet 10,000 spiritual stones. However, he had received 500,000 in return. After deducting some fees from the gambling house, he had made some money. Mu family courtyard. You want to leave Clearwater City? Where to? Mu Tianhe asked in surprise. Muyu's sudden decision to leave Clearwater City shocked the Mu family, especially Mu Tianhe. He felt that he owed Muyu a lot and had yet to make it up to his grandson. However, Muyu was planning to leave Clearwater City. I don't know. I'm used to drifting. I want to travel around. Muyu smiled. However, there was a tinge of loneliness in his heart. This was his second home. He did not want to leave this place. However, there were many things that he had to do personally. There was nothing he could do in Clearwater City. Mu Zhixing placed his hand on Muyu's shoulder. With a serious expression, he asked, "Is what you're going to do very dangerous?" Muyu remained silent. "Be careful. If you get tired one day, come back. We'll wait for you at home." What surprised Muyu was that Mu Zhixing did not stop him. Instead, he patted Muyu's shoulder in support of Muyu's decision. Muyu looked at his biological father. Even though they did not have a deep relationship, Mu Yu still respected Mu Zhixing. Your future lies outside of Clearwater City. I don't want to restrict you. If your mother was still around, she would think the same way, Mu Zhixing continued. Mu Yu nodded. He felt a tinge of sadness in his heart. Zhu Xiaoqi was one of Mu Yu's regrets. But I don't want big brother Mu Yu to leave. Mu Xian ran over and hugged Mu Yu. Little Xian, be good. When you grow up and learn real skills, I'll come back and take you to the ends of the world. Okay, Mu Yu said with a smile as he caressed Mu Xian's cute face. Mu Hao looked at Mu Yu and gritted his teeth. Learn from Master Lu properly. Do you understand? If you want to protect the Mu family, you need to become a Khanate array master. Mu Yu rudely ruffled Mu Hao's hair. I know, Mu Hao said softly. He would follow Master Lu to the array sect to learn array techniques. After Master Lu returned, he would also send people to protect the Mu family. Master Lu was already used to Mu Yu's departure. He knew that his sect master was not a person who knew his place. Be careful, Master Lu said with a smile. Okay. Mu Yu knew that Master Lu was a very responsible elder. He was relieved to leave Mu Hao in his care. Kai Lai did not mind. He did not know what had happened in the cultivation world. However, he had to return to the Elixir Cauldron sect. He planned to leave Clearwater City with Mu Yu. Mu Yu looked at all the members of the Mu family, including brother Mu Qingfan, whom he had just met. He smiled and left with Kai Lai. However, outside, Mu Yu met three familiar faces. Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Shimin Wuji had been waiting for him outside the Mu residence. Mu Yu looked at his two senior brothers calmly. He knew what he wanted to do. Are you planning to leave this place? Qingyan looked at his junior brother with a complicated expression. He could not convince his junior brother. Luo Shang looked at Mu Yu but did not speak. He no longer looked at Mu Yu with impatience. Instead, there was an indescribable emotion mixed within. Mu Yu's words that day had shaken Luo Shang's beliefs. Senior brother, I have never forgotten Master's words. Master always told us to do things based on our hearts. When we feel that we have a clear conscience, we should do it. I did not misinterpret Master's words. I have always believed that what I did was right, Mu Yu said calmly. Mu Yu thought about it for a long time. He knew that what he wanted to do was not wrong. Undoing the 9 heavens sealing devil array, whether it was for Deadwood Daddy or his master, it would be beneficial. Qingyan remained silent. He kept his opinion. Be careful. We respect each other's choice. I will not interfere with you, because I also have my own path to walk, Luo Shang suddenly said. His eyes flashed with a strange light. He seemed to know what he wanted to do. Qingyan raised his head and looked at Luo Shang. He understood that Luo Shang had already chosen his own path. Now, the 4 senior and junior brothers all had their own ideas. Since their ideas were different, they could only rely on their own abilities to act. I understand. I hope that we will not point our swords at each other in the future. You have all grown up. I do not need to worry about you. You have to take care of yourselves. Qingyan took a deep breath. Then he silently turned around and walked along the street. His back was bleak. He was thin but firm. It was as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. Qingyan still chose to walk his master's path. He would work hard to protect the cultivators. Mu Yu looked at Qingyan's back. He felt a pang of sadness. The senior brothers had chosen to part ways in the end. Back then, the senior brothers were very close. Now, because of their master, they had different opinions. They had embarked on different paths because of their own beliefs. No one knew what would happen to these 4 paths. Luo Shang patted Mu Yu's shoulder and walked in another direction. Shimin Wuji did not say anything. He just followed Luo Shang. Mu Yu also turned around and walked out of Clearwater City with Kai Lai. In the desert, yellow sand was raging. Xiang Nin stood in the death desert. He looked into the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Bai Yechan and Bai Yechan floated in the yellow sand and stopped behind Xiang Nan. Name? Xiang Nan asked faintly. I am Bai Yechan. I am Bai Yechan. Why is the Shadowless tribe looking for me? Xiang Nan's hand danced in the yellow sand. Chapter 558. The edge of the desert was surrounded by greenery and weeds. It was as if it was two different worlds. Muyu, I know you're going somewhere to cause a ruckus. It's a pity that I can't go with you. If there's anything you need me for in the future, just say the word. Kai Lai vaguely sensed that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Muyu's heart moved slightly. He smiled and said, I've already helped you remove the wood dregs. The next time I see you, I hope you'll be a rank 6 alchemist. Kai Lai was Muyu's true friend, but there were many things that he couldn't explain to Kai Lai. Don't worry, I'm the future star of the Pill Cauldron sect. Now, even senior brother Tianyo's talent can't compare to mine. Who asked me to have a good brother like you? Kai Lai laughed. The wood dregs troubled all the alchemists. Even Tianyu was the disciple of the Pill Cauldron sect's sect master, Taoist Yundan. His talent in alchemy was second to none. Unfortunately, he had encountered a bottleneck now. Without Muyu's help, he was afraid that it would take many years for him to step into the spirit-severing stage. Kai Lai's figure gradually disappeared into the horizon. Muyu looked at the rising sun in the east and spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Muyu, where are we going next? Xiao Shuai asked curiously. I'm going to 50-Mile Garden in the south. Muyu looked back at the vast desert and felt a sense of loss in his heart. He found his home here, but here he also had differences with his senior and junior brothers. He wanted to return to the 50-Mile Garden in the south. If he didn't guess wrong, Qingyan must have brought Kong Kong and Miao Miao out from the Moyan Mountain Range. After his master's accident, he wouldn't be at ease to let these two children stay there alone. Muyu wanted to take a look at them and then left. After spending a few days, he once again stepped into the 9-Mile Street. The courtyard's door could not stop Muyu. Although Feng Haochen had set up an array formation around the courtyard, this array formation would not stop Muyu. The courtyard was still as familiar as ever. The Qingsong Taoist was sitting at the stone table under the tree. He had also left the Moyan Mountains and followed his daughter here. At this moment, he was regulating his breathing and cultivating. Muyu concealed his aura and cast an invisible illusion formation for himself. Then, he silently walked past the Qingsong Taoist and headed for the backyard. Kong Kong and Miao Miao were running around in the courtyard, laughing at each other. Their cultivation had already reached the Jindan period. None of Feng Haochen's disciples were idiots. Kong Kong and Miao Miao were mischievous every day, and their cultivation was also astonishingly fast. Elder Sun was dozing off on the recliner. Kong Kong and Miao Miao ran over and whispered into each other's ears, preparing to tie a few knots for Elder Sun's beard. Muyu shook his head helplessly. It was tiring for Elder Sun to take care of these two children. The two of you are not allowed to tease Elder Sun. Lan Ling walked out of the house and shouted softly, chasing the two mischievous fellows away. Qingmei also walked out and smiled as she watched Lan Ling, scold Kong Kong and Miao Miao softly. However, Kong Kong and Miao Miao had already run far away with smiles on their faces. Why aren't Qingyan and the rest back yet? Qingmei looked at the sky and said softly, I hope they can bring Xiang Nan and Muyu back. Muyu is going to compete with them. I hope nothing happens to him. Lan Ling looked very worried. They knew what Qingyan and Luo Shang were going to do in Clearwater City. The news of Muyu's appearance in Clearwater City had already spread to everyone. Muyu looked at his senior sister and sister-in-law silently. He really wanted to tell Lan Ling that he was fine and that he had returned safely. However, when he thought about it again, could his safety really be considered as safety to his senior martial brother? At that moment, Muyu frowned. He suddenly realized that there was a slight movement next to the parasol tree in the corner of the courtyard. He walked over slowly and was extremely surprised. Xiang Nan was sitting on a branch of the parasol tree. The huge leaves of the parasol tree blocked his figure. He silently watched Lan Ling, Kong Kong, and Miao Miao, who were running around in the courtyard. I know you're here. I just came back to take a look at them. After that, I'll leave, Xiang Nan said softly. Even though Muyu used an array formation to hide his figure, Xiang Nan still discovered him at a glance. Muyu touched the parasol tree and disappeared under it. In the blink of an eye, he was sitting on another branch of the parasol tree with his back facing Xiang Nan. After a long silence, Muyu said, "I'm in the same boat as you." Muyu could not agree with what Xiangnan had done. However, he realized that he was not qualified to persuade him. It was just like how other people would not understand him if he wanted to undo the Nine Heavens demon sealing array. They all had their own beliefs and perseverance. Perhaps they were wrong, but they did not want to admit this mistake. The 50-mile garden in the south is considered the most peaceful place in the cultivation world. Since cultivators are prohibited from fighting on the streets, nothing will happen to Lan Ling, and the others here. Xiangnan looked at Lan Ling, back through the leaves. There were many orchids planted in the courtyard, and Lan Ling, was taking care of them at the moment. "Have you been to the Moyun mountain range?" Muyu asked. Xiangnan nodded. "After the immortal confining prison was lifted, I was worried about Master, so I went back. However, I was too late. Master and Shu have disappeared. They must have fallen into the hands of the Threefold Palace." However, the Threefold Palace is mysterious and unfathomable. I still can't find out where they are. No one knew where the Threefold Palace was. They appeared and disappeared unpredictably like ghosts. There was no trace of them. Muyu wished he could rush over and save his master, but he was so weak. He was nothing in front of a colossus like the Threefold Palace. Muyu gritted his teeth and suppressed the thought in his heart. He was afraid that when he faced the Threefold Palace's array guardian in the future, he would see his master's familiar face. His master was immortal. If the Threefold Palace's array guardian captured his master, they would definitely take away his immortal body. If that was the case, how would he deal with the Threefold Palace's array guardian? What are you going to do next? I saw the method to undo the Nine Heavens demon sealing array in Hutu's memories. Only by killing can the balance of the Nine Heavens demon sealing array be broken. Do you want to kill someone? Asked Xiangnan. Killing was also the method that Gomong had told Muyu. Muyu's hand gently brushed the leaves of the wutong tree. The wutong tree swayed in the wind in joy. It calmed Muyu's restless heart. "I don't want to kill anyone. I just want to find a place to raise my cultivation and undo the Nine Heavens demon sealing array to save Deadwood Daddy." Deadwood Daddy is also one of the array guardians of the immortal confinement prison. He might know something about the Threefold Palace. Muyu calmly said. He didn't know when it started, but he no longer felt repulsed by killing. He even liked the feeling of killing, especially when he killed Tianbu Wai. He even wanted to kill more people to satisfy the murderous intent in his heart. The death energy of the netherworld grass affected him, giving him a new understanding of life. However, he restrained himself and didn't want to become the reaper of life. He forced himself to hate killing. The only way to undo the Nine Heavens demon sealing array is to kill, isn't it? Xiangnan frowned. Muyu shook his head and said, "Killing is not the only way. I have learned array techniques. I have learned how to undo the Nine Heavens demon sealing array, but my cultivation is not enough. There are many people in the cultivation world who don't deserve to live. Their lives are meaningless. For example, the people of the Stargate, the Gate of Hell, the Gate of Life and Death, and the people of the Silhouette Being. You don't need to feel guilty for killing them because they all deserve to die." Xiangnan's voice was very calm. It was so calm that Muyu found it strange. The honest and honest Xiangnan would never say something like this. Muyu fell into silence again. The people that Xiangnan had mentioned truly deserved to die. They didn't respect the lives of others and used all sorts of methods to kill others. They were indirectly creating soul power for the Threefold Palace so that it would become stronger. They were aiding the evildoers and did not deserve to live. Every time someone dies on the Threefold Continent, the power of the Threefold Palace increases. That's why I rarely kill people. But Hutu told me that the death chi in your body can devour everything, including soul power. Killing people won't bring any power to the Threefold Palace. You are the real god of death. The people you kill are the most meaningful. Xiangnan said, "Are you encouraging me to kill people?" Muyu frowned. Xiangnan said, "Do you really think I want cultivators to die? I just want you to know that some people will die. Dying in your hands is different from dying in the hands of others. The threefold palace will start a war between the human and the human race. At that time, a large number of lives will die, and the soul power produced will be unprecedentedly huge. Once the war starts, the threefold palace will be at its strongest. So all I can do is to control more cultivators and not let them die. Xiangnan paused and continued. Qingyan has never liked to kill people. He has been with his master since he was a child, and has been subtly influenced by his master's easygoing personality. Luo Shang is the most violent. He is the one who likes to kill the most. But because his master didn't like to kill people, he respected his master and changed his personality. I also hate killing people, especially when I know what a person's family will go through after they are killed. Xiangnan said with a repressed emotion, but I know that many things can't be avoided just because you hate them. This is the only way I can fight against the threefold palace. I don't want the people under my control to die. I want them to avoid dying. But after they are possessed by the demon soul, they will be left with indelible wounds, right? Muyu asked. The ability of dominating consciousness was more than enough to control the consciousness of a cultivator, but it had a shortcoming, which was that it could not allow the cultivator to naturally integrate into their own lives after being controlled. The controlled person would only carry out orders like a puppet and would not have their own emotions. This problem could be avoided by merging the demon soul's consciousness with a human's consciousness. However, merging the demon soul's consciousness with a human's consciousness would cause serious harm to the cultivator. Xiangnan was silent. Then he said softly, "This is a war. It concerns the human race and human. It concerns the hatred between us and the threefold palace. It also concerns the fate of the human race. They blindly believe in the threefold palace. We can't wake them up. Only by destroying the threefold palace can the human race have a future. War is always accompanied by sacrifices. Without the souls of 100,000 cultivators, the threefold palace will lose a part of its power." Muyu sighed silently. He realized that Xiangnan was right, but he also felt that he was wrong. He couldn't refute Xiangnan's point of view. Xiangnan's plan also involved sacrificing the consciousness of 100,000 cultivators. It was quite cruel. The wind gently swayed the sycamore tree. Its huge leaves fluttered and fell all over the small courtyard. Elder Sun had woken up at some point. He helplessly smoothed his beard, which had been tangled by Kong Kong and Meow Meow. Seeing the fallen sycamore leaves in the courtyard, he picked up a broom and began to clean up the fallen leaves. Half of the fallen leaves in the courtyard were swept under the sycamore tree. Elder Sun wiped his sweat and realized that he hadn't finished sweeping half of the fallen leaves. Suddenly, he seemed to sense something. He raised his head and looked at the top of the sycamore tree. However, there was nothing there. Strange. I clearly felt the presence of an array pattern just now. Elder Sun walked around the sycamore tree in confusion. However, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. When he picked up the broom and wanted to sweep the remaining half of the fallen leaves in the courtyard, he was shocked to find that all the fallen leaves were spinning and floating towards the sycamore tree as if they had a mind of their own. This! Elder Sun opened his mouth wide. He didn't understand what was happening. There was no one else in the courtyard besides him. How did the fallen sycamore leaves come over? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.